All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the New Jersey Globe's 2023 election live stream. As you know, if you're watching this video, Election Day is next Tuesday. We've got all 120 seats of the New Jersey Legislature on the ballot, plus a bunch of county offices, a bunch of local offices. It's a full-fledged election year in New Jersey, which every year is a full-fledged election year in New Jersey. We're just lucky like that. So thank you for joining us. I'm Joey Fox. I'm a reporter for the New Jersey Globe. I'm based in DC, but I have stayed very plugged in on all of these fascinating races in New Jersey. With me, as always, is my boss, David Wildstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe. We've got Micah Rasmussen, who is the director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. And joining us for the first time is Ryan Dubicki, who is an elections researcher at the Associated Press, who does a lot of great work on compiling vote-by-mail data and understanding the way elections work to a nitty-gritty level that the rest of us can only dream of. So thank you, everybody, for being here, both you three on the stream with me and everybody watching. We will try to keep this within a reasonable length. No guarantees. In fact, that will not happen, but I'm just putting it out there at the beginning that we'll try. Yeah, so we'll be pretty granular in this, as usual. We'll aim to talk about every district, especially the competitive districts, in some level of detail. We really like the details here. We're big picture people, but we get the big picture through the small picture. But first, David, just sort of to start us off, what is the overarching story of this election year, if there is one at all, that you can tell?
So I think this is the off year election. This is the election that the modern day founding fathers of 1947 had in mind, where it's supposed to be an election about state issues with state candidates and no interference from what's happening in Washington. It's been a long time since that was true, but this is the cycle out of every 4 years that is traditionally the lowest turnout. It's also, as Joey pointed out, in a spectacular voter guide, better than anyone that I ever produced. So kudos to you on doing that. And if you haven't read it, I mean, just take some time and read through it, because you'll learn a lot about New Jersey. But this is the election that is the first under New Jersey's new map, a map that should have been run 2 years ago, but got delayed. A map that was, for the first time, a deal map, co-parented by Leroy Jones and Al Barlas, that really set and stage a map that likely protects the Democratic majorities, but gives Republicans, in a special circumstance year and a wave year, an opportunity to take control. We'll talk a lot tonight about whether that is this year and whether those issues are enough. I mean, this is my 25th legislative election, and you could do the math on how many years that is. And I've seen three waves: 1973, 1985, and 1991. They don't happen often. And I'm not so sure that I see these issues as part of a wave, but we'll talk about that. The last thing, things I wanted to say is that this election, I think more than in past years, is very much about people voting for party and not individuals. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. The polarization nationally of Democrats versus Republicans, but also an election that is taking place during a time when it's harder than ever for incumbents and candidates to develop independent relationships with voters. And what it really means is, if you want to know how Roy Fryman voted, you're going to have to depend upon Roy Fryman or his opponents to tell you and convince you, because you really haven't had an opportunity to learn about him from any independent way. So, I'll begin this probably where I'm going to end this, which is, if you're going to ask me what's going to happen on Tuesday, I don't know, because it's off year, and and there's a lot of unpredictable factors here, but it's never been easier to vote. So, I think we've got an interesting election ahead of us.
The one thing I would add is that the person who brokered that compromise map, that deal map that you're talking about, Judge Karchman, I think looms large in this election. I remember 2 years ago, we were tracking about half the number of districts that we're tracking now. And so just on the basis of more of the map being competitive, or more of the map being where races could be competitive, I think you're talking about an improvement. You're talking about maybe not where every district is competitive, or even most of them are, but where more of them are. And so that's one starting point. I think the other starting point is, you're right, low turnout. You're absolutely right, David, low turnout. Also, we want to be very careful. Ryan and I spend a lot of time looking at these early numbers, not to overlook at them. But one thing we can say about the early in-person vote and the vote by mail is that there's not an unusual level of activity to detect something in the air that we're just not detecting. It looks an awful lot like 2022's results or 2021's results. So we're just not seeing anything yet that could detect a wave that we haven't seen so far.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Micah. I would say this is, obviously on the lower side of turnout. I've seen, at least in the Twitter world, people comparing this to 2021, and that's definitely fair because this is a state election every 2 years. But I would also, for my purposes, I'm also comparing this to last year in 2022 for two reasons. A, there was also, like this year, there was no statewide race last year. So therefore, it automatically yielded lower turnout. And B, with in-person early voting still in its infancy, this would be a better 2022 would be a better year to compare to in terms of advanced voting, which is a lot of my work and a lot of my modeling that I do at work. But I think in terms of overall turnout, we're looking at, I would say, so I track basically part of my work is tracking mail ballot return rates each day until they become official. And based on 2022, what the mail voting is looking right now, I would say, in 2021, we were at roughly 74% of, on this, based on this day, which was the day today's data was as of yesterday, which would be election E-6. In 2021, we were at 74% of the official mail vote on E-6. And then in 2022, we're at 79. So I think we're roughly in that range in terms of, how many mail ballots will eventually be counted. And, based on the math I'm looking at now, we're currently at 363, 422. If the mail return rate is the same as, last year in 2021, I'd say we're looking at roughly 470 mail votes that'll be cast statewide total. Early voting still new. We're definitely gonna be lower in early voting, in my opinion. So far, there's still 4 days left, but on average statewide, there's 10,961 in-person early voting ballots cast on average each day. With 4 days left, we're looking at roughly, I would say, a little over 100,000 in-person early votes that'll be cast, which is, more than 50%. More than 150% less of 2021 and 2022. But, there's still 4 days left. Things could change. Brian Stack still has to get out the early vote effort. So, but this is in terms of now. But I would say, in terms of my work and consistency, both last year and 2021 are, pretty consistent in terms of voting behavior so far. I call this the new normal of New Jersey elections. Mm-hmm. 2020, it was all mail, as you all know. So it was a huge one-off. So I call this the new normal, 2021, 2022. And the voting patterns are very closely aligned. So that's good. But yeah.
So the one thing I'll throw on top of that before we start diving into the district by district level is, Micah, you mentioned that the playing field looks bigger than it did in 2021, but we're not necessarily seeing any kind of super unusual signs of really weird activity. That's all true. One thing I will say is that we were still all caught off guard by 2021. And I mean, I think that's a really important part of this year's story is that 2021, Democrats were hoping to gain a couple of seats, and then they ended up losing a net 7 seats. Steve Sweeney, the Senate president, ended up losing re-election. Literally no one saw that coming. So you know, that the third district is now in the playing field, and it wasn't in 2021 because no one was paying attention to it. But then, of course, it was, and Democrats almost lost. And the same was true in some various other districts where no one was really paying that close of attention. And then Democrats won by, I don't know, 4 or 5 points, like not super impressive victories. So, I mean, it's just one thing that I've learned from the last 2+ years of doing this is that you kind of, the uncertainty factor is always there, and it can come from unpredictable places. So I think that that's a good outlook to have. And I'm not saying that you guys don't have it. I mean, I think we all are sort of going into this with like, yeah, I'm not really sure. There's a lot of different outcomes here. But I think that the 2021 is really what is looming over things. And it's really how people are thinking about it. It's sort of like 2021 set us onto this status quo of where the legislature is at. Where does it go from here?
Yeah. And to that point, one of the biggest difference, the biggest difference between 2021 and 2023 is there are an awful lot of legislators who are very relieved not to have Governor Murphy as a running mate this time, to be running on their own. In their own.
Yeah, he is not wildly unpopular. He typically posts pretty decent approval ratings, but at the same time, you're right that legislators in general kind of want to wipe their hands of him a little bit. He's not going to be on the ballot again unless he decides to run for some higher office. His wife might be, we'll see, but that's another discussion.
Yeah, sixth year of 8 years, in office, people, are ready to start to think beyond, right? And especially maybe I'm thinking more of South Jersey legislators when I say that, but quite happy to be running in their own right.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to kick us off. I've got a lovely slideshow. This here, nice free advertising for the voters guide that we published this morning. Go check it out. It's, only a measly 150 pages long. It's just breeze through it, no problems. So I'm going to play my hand a little bit with a lot of this because we're going to be able to tell which districts I think are competitive based on which ones I made slides for and which ones I didn't. So we're starting off with the first district. I don't have a slide for the first district. This is the farthest southern point of New Jersey. You've got State Senator Mike Testa, who is relatively young. He's 47. He's seen as a rising star in the Republican Party, could be running for higher office someday, running for re-election. He flipped Jeff Van Drew's old Democratic-held Senate seat in 2019. And the district kind of hasn't looked back since. I mean, do any of you see this once Democratic district being remotely competitive this year?
No, this is safe Testa, and he has made it safe. And he's got 2 running mates. That are sometimes, they're from Cape May, they get overshadowed, but nobody's coming near this guy. And I think what's important to watch, and it's the only reason I'm talking this long about District 1 is Cumberland Republicans under their county chairman, also Michael Testa, took control of county government. It's one of 2 counties in the state that since Phil Murphy has been governor have flipped from Democrat to Republican. The other is Salem. And this year, you could be looking at, with the exception of the county clerk who's not up, you could be looking at wiping out Democrats in county government in Cumberland, which, is Micah Rasmussen's home county and was pretty competitive before it was pretty much Democratic. And I think that's the significant part of it here.
Yeah, the Cumberland Democrats have fallen on very hard times. I think the next time we're going to be talking about these counties or this district, when there's a big shakeup, is probably when Michael Testa decides to run for higher office, whether that be Jeff Van Drew's seat in the House sooner or later, or whether it be for the Senate or for governor. When that void at the top of the ticket happens, maybe it will happen when the Democrats are still in disarray, or maybe it will happen when they've got their act together. But that's the next time I think we're going to see a big shakeup down there.
And even then, not guaranteed. I mean, I feel like Democrats have become a bit rudderless down there. They're losing things even in places where they could win, like in Vineland and Millville area. They're like not doing so hot, and that's supposed to be like the Democratic core of this district. So I'm not optimistic for Democrats here. One place right up the shore, a little more competitive. Yeah. We got the second district. This is, I think, the most perennially sort of unwaveringly competitive district in the entire legislature. I mean, the second district has always been Atlantic County, and going back to when the modern legislative system was inaugurated in the 1970s, this district has just almost always seen competitive races. Atlantic County has almost always been an area where both parties can do well, where individual incumbents can build really strong brands, where voters can really identify with these individual candidates. And one interesting fact, a fact that I find really interesting, is that from 2003, I believe it was, to 2021, the district never once elected a slate of 3 legislators to the same party. So they were always, and this is always on the same ballot, or I guess most of the time the same ballot, depending on whether the Senate was up. They were specifically choosing to split their ticket one way or the other, choosing this guy from one party, that guy from another party. And then in 2021, we saw the people on the left all get elected. We saw Vince Palestina hold the Senate seat for Republicans, and then Don Guardian and Claire Swift flip the assembly seats. So, I mean, I'll go back to the maps. You can see it was a decently handy Chitterelli victory here. The district got a little bit bluer thanks to redistricting, because it picked up Galloway, which is sort of a light red town. I mean, that's sort of the overview of the district. It doesn't really touch on the race this year. What has the race this year looked like in this district?
Well, Ryan and I will always go to early numbers. It's the one district where I think Democratic performance so far has not been up to par. Right, Ryan? I mean, they're running about 1,000 votes behind in early voting where they would have been 2 years ago. So you can just take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, running slightly behind. I would give you maybe be the devil's advocate and say maybe they're exactly on par, only because in terms of like the mail votes, they're roughly the statewide average. 65% of the mail votes in that district are Democrat, which is average, which is equals a statewide number. So in terms of par, that could be par. One thing Tessa has going for him is not that this is a big difference. Not that this is so significant, because in-person early voting is still very new in Jersey, but his hometown, Vineland, has the largest number of Republican in-person early votes. So I can see maybe in this case, home municipality might have an effect. We'll look at the other districts too, but yeah, in terms of Democratic achievement, yeah, I would say they're either on par or slightly below it. Micah, you're right.
And one of the things about District 2 is you have a history of big personalities as state senators. Hap Farley and Joe McCann and Steve Persky and larger than life Bill Gormley, and then Jim Whalen, Chris Brown, really good vote getter. Now you've got Vince Palestina. It's one place where senators are able to develop relationships with voters. This one, is I think clearly tilting Republican and favoring the incumbents, but Democrats are up to something in the second district. They've got $300,000 worth of network television buys in the final week, aimed at just taking a shot at Palestina. It's a gamble. They've got a candidate who has won countywide twice, but lost an assembly race last time with Karen Fitzpatrick, and they're trying it. And when we wrap up South Jersey, we should talk about the 800-pound gorilla here, which is the not retired George E. Norcross III, and what he stands to gain here in terms of flipping a bunch of seats. His power in recent years has come from the size of his delegation, and he's a smart guy. And if he's investing $300,000, they found the money to do that, and they've got to think that maybe something's there. I mean, quite frankly, I think Palestina has appealed to independents. I think he has. He's certainly worked well with Democrats. Sometimes I joke, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for saying this, but sometimes I joke it's Vincent Palestina R. Helmy, because of the strong relationship that Senator Palestina and Governor Murphy's former chief of staff, George Helmy, had. Palestina has come in and has used his power much like Bill Gormley did.
Exactly.
For a very long time, he has wielded that vote and that seat in order to bring things into Atlantic County. And I don't know that is easily lost on voters.
Yeah, no, I think it's exactly the same brand and the same deal making that Atlantic County voters have come to expect. And that's one of the reasons why I think Palestina is well positioned, because he's really gone after that mode of lawmaking and that mode of representation for the last 2 years. And it is right out of the Atlantic County playbook.
So quickly, we haven't really touched on the Democratic candidates that much. This slate is sort of an interesting slate that Democrats put together here. You've got Karen Fitzpatrick, who's an Atlantic County commissioner. She is one of 2 countywide Democrats left in Atlantic County. She's running for Senate, and she was subbed in pretty late in the process. It was originally a Pleasantville councilman named Victor Carmona, who was in there, and he dropped out over the summer. She subbed in. She was running for the assembly before. You've got 2 non-office holders running for the assembly. Alfonso Harrell, who this has been a little bit lost, but there was a whole deal in place last year over a certain matter in Atlantic County level redistricting that we don't need to go into specifically. But part of the outcome of that deal was that Atlantic Democrats would finally put a person of color on this legislative ticket. Atlantic County is getting increasingly diverse. It's always had a pretty big Black population in Atlantic City, but it's increasingly Hispanic. It's got a growing Asian population as well. And if Harrell was elected, he would be the first person of color to ever represent the district. I'm not sure if he's the first person of color ever to be nominated, but I think he might be. Oh, he isn't?
Damon Turner's run before in that district.
Okay, so then I'm wrong about that.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, we've talked about the strengths of the Republican incumbents, and I think that's pretty formidable. Is this kind of the ticket that Democrats would have wanted here?
Usually that kind of summer swap out doesn't happen unless they see an opportunity, right, David? You usually see this because somebody sees something happening.
Except that the summer swap out was the original plan. You know, they didn't have the slate that they really wanted. If it was still Victor Carmona, we wouldn't be talking about dropping $300,000 here in the last week. You know, Harrell's an interesting candidate. We talk about people, low name ID going into election day. I think that's certainly the case here. It's a shame because they all have interesting stories. Palestina was a guy who was an assemblyman a decade ago, has come back. It's Vince 2.0, and he's really figured it out. You have Don Guardian, who is the openly gay member of the New Jersey Legislature, and he's a Republican, but former mayor of Atlantic City. Not an easy place for a Republican to win, and it was a partisan election. And Claire Swift, who was brand new in a district that doesn't typically elect women, right? I mean, it's Dolores Cooper and Claire Swift. This is a white guy district, and but she comes from a well-known Atlantic County family. Then you've got Alfonso Harrell, probably one of the better stories in the state. He's a Marine veteran turned kindergarten teacher. It's just like a great story. And Lisa Bender, who I think ran for local office once in her hometown, didn't make it, but she's a marine biologist at a time where up until a couple of days ago, everybody thought that dead whales washing up on the beaches of Atlantic County as a result of offshore wind was going to be an important issue. But I don't know if these backgrounds have mattered as much to voters as it does for people like us who talk about it, because I don't know that everybody knows who they are.
There was one great moment in the debate down here where that background mattered that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Everybody was asked about the Atlantic City takeover, and all of the assembly candidates, one by one, talked about the inevitability, the importance of it, the rationale, right? Sort of defended it. And then Guardian gave his answer last, and he gave this very impassioned, no, that's exactly the wrong answer, and here's why. And of course, he knows the issue intimately as the former mayor of the town. But that background really played very strongly in that debate.
I mean, you can kind of tell just from the partisan map how divided of a district this is, where you've got Atlantic City and Pleasantville, both of which are majority minority, and they very much stand out politically, and Democrats rely on them heavily. And the politics of balancing that are a bit complicated, and they're especially complicated given the candidates who are running, where the only one, I believe, who lives in Atlantic City is Don Guardian. It's a fascinating district. It's one that really has this sharp divide more than almost any other district in the state, between where one party does well, where the other party does well, who lives where, who lives there. It's intense.
And I don't know if this is a minor point or not, but I was able to attend a virtual hearing today in Atlantic County. There's a bunch of matters coming up, and one of them is that Democrats are trying to shut down Craig Calloway, who is probably one of the premier ballot harvesters in the state. Now he's on to a new thing, which is he's assisting people who are saying, I'm disabled and I need somebody to come in and assist me. And he's now the assister. He's found this new loophole. Calloway lately has been with Republicans, so the Democrats are trying to shut him down. If this is a really close race, things like that make a difference.
Yeah, Van Drew brought him over to the Republican side when he flipped.
Yeah, Joey, a question for you is Galloway is the big new town in this district. What's the impact of Galloway being in the second? It used to be in the ninth, where it didn't matter in terms of affecting the numbers from 2021 to 23.
I mean, I think that what matters more than Galloway is what towns left the district. You can see on the right there. So you gain Galloway, which is, a modestly Republican town. It voted for Joe Biden in 2020, but typically it supports Republicans by small margins, kind of in keeping with other towns in the district. It's sort of like another Egg Harbor Township, just sort of thrown in there, which on the face of it seems like it maybe favors Republicans. But then you look at the towns that left: Mullica, deep red; Folsom, deep red; Buna and Buena Vista used to be more competitive. Now they're pretty Republican. Egg Harbor City, kind of competitive. On net, I mean, obviously the math is all right there. It's D plus 1.3. Like that's the basic line here, where if a Republican candidate had won by, let's say, 1 point in 2021, which didn't happen, Vince Palestina won by more than that, so did his running mates. But if he had won by 1 point, under these lines, he probably would have lost. That's the effect of adding Galloway. I mean, I can't speak for what maybe the local effects are. This is not a part of the state that I have personally spent a lot of time in or know about the individual dynamics there. But just on a basic partisan level, this is a little bit of a boost for Democrats. If this race is very close, then they will be thankful that the district lines were redrawn this way.
Yeah, that western part of the state is pretty Trumpy. Western part of the county is pretty Trumpy. Michael Testa's mother is a local committee woman in Buna, and it has trended pretty red recently. Not since Chuck Scirillo and Suzanne Kelly has it really been competitive there.
Buna and Buena Vista are also at the very top of the list for New Jersey towns with really confusingly pronounced names. Like no one coming into the state would ever think to call them anything other than Buena and Buena Vista. And they get there and they're like, no.
Not confusing to Micah, though. So
not confusing to Micah. I understand.
Colorado pronounces Buna the same way, by the way.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And by the way, for old timers like Mike and I, if you said Buena in front of Mayor Cirillo, you got quite a lashing. He was very, very careful to teach people to pronounce the name.
So I think we have probably covered most of what we can cover about the second district. It's always a competitive district, but this year it's definitely looking like Republicans sort of have advantages that Democrats don't. So moving on, one district where maybe that's not true, the third district. So this is the district that Micah and I were talking about a little earlier. This is Steve Sweeney's old district. It's a district that in 2021, no one was really looking closely at. Democrats were running like a couple of stray TV ads, but they didn't think they were going to win. Republicans had no money. And then famously, a random truck driver named Ed Durr unseats Steve Sweeney. And his two running mates, Beth Ann McCarthy-Patrick and Beth Sawyer, win too. Suddenly, this district that had just been part of the South Jersey blue wall and nobody really thought much of it was completely red. It was massive shock. I mean, like, I assume that most people who are watching this video were also around in 2021. If you were, I don't know, 18 and you were 16 in 2021, so you weren't following it, just trust us that it was a huge shock. It just caught us all completely by surprise. And so now we've got the first time where Durr and his running mates, Beth Sawyer, we can talk about that in a second. She is no longer on the ticket, but Durr and his running mates are running for re-election. And it's a totally new situation for them. They are no longer these sort of also-rans who are just on the ballot because the GOP needs someone. They are incumbents. They have a lot on their shoulders. They have 2 years of a voting record now to defend. They have Democrats who are spending millions of dollars to defeat them instead of ignoring them. So this is a totally fascinating race. I mean, it's can the South Jersey Democratic machine take all of the advantages and the institutional sort of heft that is built up over the years and use it to take back this district that was once so easily theirs? Do you think I'm going to keep on opening these with open questions. I mean, do they have a shot? This is, as you can tell from these maps, pretty red district. Do you think that the South Jersey machine can kind of take that rough start and turn it into something that might be a win?
The Democrats clearly think so. I mean, they're playing to win. Whether it's a grudge match or not, they are playing to win. And just like we talked about 2 maybe being marginally off in the early vote, 3 is on fire. I mean, they are cooking in all burners. If anywhere in the state is above where they were 2 years ago or 1 year ago, it's District 3.
Yeah, they're exceeding 2021, where we were at in 2021. By 112%, the Democrats are. Total, it's 108%. So I feel like even overall turnout might even be higher than 2021 in this district. Maybe not overall. It depends on election day vote. But getting more granular with the data, believe it or not, a plurality of the mail votes in District 3 are coming from West Deptford Township. So I'm not sure if that's significant or not, but whether that favors one party over the other. But yeah, in terms of overall turnout, Mike, I'm sure you agree this is like already exceeding expectations compared to 2021.
And I think one of the important things, and I'll say this for District 3 and District 4 at the same time, is Democrats have invested a lot of time and energy and resources to changing their playing field and increasing the number of registered Democrats who automatically receive vote by mail. So we talk about this being the off year election. My understanding is about a third of the vote by mail ballots that have been returned on the Democratic side come from Democrats who would not typically vote in this cycle. About a third of those are more committed federal election year voters, and certainly not voters who voted in 2019. So I think what we're seeing is they're changing their luck a little bit there. The other thing is Ed Durr is a big personality, and whether you like him or you don't like him, he has not gone Trenton. He is the same Ed Durr that was driving, a truck for Raymore and Flanagan in 2021. He still drives that truck, and he has not tempered his personality in order to say, gee, now I'd like to serve in the U.S. in the state Senate for a very long time, so I'm going to have to sort of moderate myself. I'm going to have to sort of behave myself and sort of watch what I say a little bit more. He hasn't done that. So again, whether you approve or disapprove of him, he has stayed authentic, and I think a big part of it's going to be whether the voters there like it or not. It's. I say this a lot to people, and it's probably true for the vast majority of those of you that are watching, but we live inside a very specific bubble of people that are watching politics all across the state. And for people who are not from Western Cumberland and Salem and Gloucester counties, everybody may look at Ed Durr differently. But then again, you look at John Berzicelli, and he's he may actually be sort of an incumbent also, in the sense that he spent 20 years in the legislature. I don't know that people realize he was gone, that he got swept out in that event that none of us anticipated. That he's not still there. He has, he's always run, fairly strongly. They're putting a lot of money down there. The question is the messaging that is being used in North Jersey to turn out Democrats, is that a good message in that part of the state or not? And I think we'll probably see this. I don't see it. They're spending millions of dollars on the Democratic side, and Durr has not had a lot. Joey will probably get to this primary they had that divided them a little bit, but this has shades to me of '93, where after the anti-Florio wave, some of the districts started to shift back. And, but I remember, Dick LaRosa in Trenton and John Scott in South Bergen, they were able to stay on for an additional 4-year term before that district eventually realigned. I don't know whether Ed Durr has built his relationship with the voters in a way that he's just popular. I'll tell you one little tidbit that I found interesting. I don't know if anybody else is going to find it interesting, but somebody did a poll, because I'm trying very hard not to identify who it was, but somebody did a poll and showed that Ed the trucker's name ID is significantly more than Edward Durr. And maybe because of whatever media attention, maybe, whatever word of mouth, but he's better known as Ed the trucker than he is as Ed Durr, but he's not on the ballot as Ed the trucker. So I don't know what that means, other than I find it mildly interesting.
I mean, so yeah, you mentioned the primary, and I'll kind of dive into that. It's not just Democrats who have sort of tried to hit Durr for being a pretty conservative guy who hasn't really gone along with the flow in Trenton. That was actually the basis for an entire primary challenge against him. You had his former assembly running mate, Beth Sawyer, launch a challenge against him. She had one running mate for the assembly, and then there was a whole county level thing that we can get to in a second. And her message basically was, Ed Durr and I are both Republicans. We both believe in Republican values, but Durr has not been effective enough. Durr has not done the work that he needs to do in Trenton to get bills passed, to do the typical legislator stuff. And Durr's response was basically, I'm fighting the power. I'm doing what the voters want me to do. I'm putting myself out there in a way that these other phony Republicans aren't. And he swept the floor with her. He won all the county conventions, and then he won, I think, every municipality in the district when it came to the actual primary election. I mean, it just sort of, I should clarify, he didn't win the primary conventions against her. He won it against an earlier challenger, but whatever. That's a moot point at this point. He won by a lot. He clearly resonates pretty strongly with this sort of Republican base in the district. And in 2021, that was enough, or the Republican base, the Chitterelli voting base, was enough to put him over the top, even though Steve Sweeney and John Berzacelli and Adam Taliaferro had all these long time connections, it was still enough to put him over the top. The question is, now that he is more well known, and also that Democrats are specifically attacking him over his comments on things like abortion and Muslims. I mean, I think abortion is really the big one. He said some kind of alarming stuff about abortion, stuff that some of those voters in 2021 probably would not have realized. We'll kind of see whether that changes things, whether that changes the math. And one other thing I'll add is, on the Democratic side, a big part of the speculation for like the year leading up to the election was whether Steve Sweeney would try to get back in. And that was kind of going to be the signal of like, okay, if Sweeney's in, then South Jersey Democrats are really serious about this. He didn't get in. He's kind of more interested in running for governor in 2 years. But maybe it didn't matter so much. I mean, he was a top name in the district. John Berzacelli, as David mentioned, also has a long history in the district, and South Jersey Democrats aren't treating it like that was any kind of fail. They've got a full ticket behind him. They've got Gloucester County Commissioner Heather Simmons. They've got Dave Bailey, who's a nonprofit guy in Salem County. This is a ticket that they clearly really believe in. So That was kind of word vomit that didn't really lead into any particular conclusion, but that's a purpose. I don't know what the conclusion is. I honestly think that there's a possibility that we wake up on the day after election day and we see a result basically matching the Chitterelli results here, where Durr just wins by a bunch because it turns out that's where the district's at now and no amount of money can change that. But also, I think it's perfectly possible that Democrats just sweep through it too, because that's where the district is normally at when you don't have a specific weird situation like 2021. So who knows?
Yeah, we're looking at a guy who we're looking at a senator, Ed Durr, who has done some, made some controversial statements, and he was, before he was a senator, he was active on social media, and he, if he saw something that maybe some might find to be offensive, he didn't find it offensive. He found it funny, so he liked it, and he's being held accountable for what he said on social media, what he liked on social media,
years before he was a politician with any serious chance of winning anything.
Way before. Because remember, Durr ran twice before the Senate, and people forget he was a Republican Assembly candidate and got swamped in this district, and he was an independent Assembly candidate at one point. So he's not really a mainstream guy, and I keep going back to an election that will always baffle everybody, which was 2016 in a presidential race. I understand for those of you that are watching that chide me on saying it's not a federal election year. Stop mentioning what federal election results were, but I don't have it in front of me now. I don't know, Joe, if you remember the Trump percentage in this district, but
I mean, I remember in 2020 he won it by something like 2 to 3 points.
Yeah,
so I don't know about 2016.
So maybe people in this district just they don't care that Ed Durr was a little controversial on social media. That's what this campaign is going to show.
Well, I'll bring up another even numbered year, which is 22, and remember that Gloucester Republicans thought that they could win control and were unable to do so. And so, the resurgence of the South Jersey Democrats in this district may have begun last year, in the sense that they could start rebuilding the firewall for themselves. If they can do what they did again last year, if they can do that again in the county races this year, then that may help Berzicelli as well.
So that's a beautiful segue into the one county race that I think we should cover in some depth, which is Gloucester County. It's, I believe, it's definitely the only county where control is up this year, just mathematically. I think that's true. And it's kind of the only county where people are expecting like a hyper competitive result. I should mention that the Atlantic County Sheriff, I don't think we touched on him. The Democratic Atlantic County Sheriff is also in a tough re-election race, and that might be another very close race. But in terms of control of county government, Gloucester's kind of it. That's the one that's core this year. So Republicans flipped 2 seats in 2021. They tried to flip 2 more in 2022 and fell short. And now there's the remaining 3 seats up this year. And I think the question in everyone's mind is kind of, well, is this going to be a 2021 or is this going to be a 2022? And there's actually not much difference between those, because they only won them by like a couple points in 2021, and then they lost them by a couple points in 2022. So we're really talking about little inches here. But yeah, I mean, what have the dynamics of that race been? I know that there's also a really bitter primary that led up to it.
Yeah, I mean, Gloucester County Republicans are, at war still. There's 2 very clear divisions within that party that you saw from the primary. It hasn't healed. I keep quoting Camden County Republican Chairman Tom Crone saying this is why Republicans can't have nice things. If Republicans won 3 seats, if they were to sweep these offices, this is from the faction of the party that is different from the other 2 that are serving there. And
it is different from Ed Durr. Ed Durr did not run alongside the people who are now beneath him on the same ticket.
That's correct. And so we're not let's say Republicans sweep the 3 seats, but it's not necessarily a 5-2 Republican majority. It's really a 3-2 split, and it would not surprise me to see the 2 that are there now, who are part of that different faction, they could easily team up with Steve Sweeney and maybe put together some sort of coalition. So I don't even know, if they were successful, if these three are successful, we still can't call this a Republican majority until we see what kind of coalitions can come together or what kind of deals happen there. Sweeney's been good at that. Sweeney's great at that. So, we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Any more third district thoughts, or can we move on to the single most competitive district in the state?
I would just say really quick, the counties in third district, Cumberland and Gloucester, Salem. First of all, for Gloucester, in terms of the vote count, because that's what I do, Gloucester is so quick with their vote counts. They're the first county to report. Like, they report like 3 minutes after poll close, and they report only their advance votes first. So I can't wait to see on election night with, given the partisan skew of advanced voting right now in District 3, I can't wait to see the first votes be high, like Durr losing a lot, with him slowly catching up as the election votes start coming in. So that's just, I want to warn the audience that that's going to happen big time in Gloucester and Salem. Cumberland, they actually merge all the vote types by municipality, so there won't be a huge gap, like partisan gap, when the results are coming in Cumberland. But I just can't wait to see what the curve on election night.
I hope that there are no conspiracies that end up getting attached to that.
Yeah.
And we'll also, this is a good time to mention that New Jersey has implemented a bunch of different election reporting reforms in the last couple of years, including, I believe that there's going to be a new reform in place for this election about, like how they report what votes are still outstanding and what have been counted, that this is the first election that'll debut. And then there's a couple of others related to like when they count the votes and how they can count them that have been in place for a year or less than a year now. So this is definitely it. Ryan, I'm sure that you are trying to track all of these different things and figure out what it all means.
I don't know if he signed the bill or not. Do you? Micah, you might know if he signed it or not.
He signed it.
Good.
Yeah. Do you know if it's effective for this election?
I checked once and I believe that it is.
Okay.
But
well,
I mean,
the
last couple of years,
I have to see it, right? I mean,
exactly. The last couple of years, I've just sort of every election that comes along, I'll be like, oh, okay, that reform's in place now. Great.
Yeah, this is a big one for people like us, right? We don't want to call it the Ryan or Joey bill, but right. The exciting thing, and David and I always say a little prayer that we don't have any races that go on counting for a week or 2 weeks, because God knows that there's going to be a New Jersey county that doesn't hold up to the scrutiny. So we hope that we don't ever get to that point. But if we do, the exciting thing about this new law is that we're going to know at the end of every day what has been counted and what hasn't been counted, what's in the count and what's not in the count. And that's a real way of ensuring accountability. There's been a lot of talk of votes coming out of the woodwork. That's not going to happen. I don't think it has happened, but it's not going to happen because we're going to know how many votes there are still to be counted at the end of every day. So we're excited about this one. Insiders are excited about it, and we hope we don't. Yeah,
I haven't read the final bill, Micah, because I know like the committees have been like tweaking it every committee session. I feel like they tweaked it, so I didn't read the final one. But correct me if I'm wrong, but each county on their website, they're supposed to display like how many election day districts have been reported, how many are left to count, how many early votes left to count, provisionals. Mail-in ballots received and to count. And then they have to submit that to the Secretary of State, who has to make a report on their websites. I can't wait to see what that report's going to look like on their website. And I would think the only caveat though for this election that is they're probably only going to be countywide estimates outstanding, so we're not going to be able to apply those numbers outstanding to any race specifically. But New Jersey has gone pretty well with the count compared to 2021, since they can now count mail ballots 5 days before election day, which, praise the Lord, it's like has been such a huge help in my opinion.
Why are we invoking prayer and God so much here?
No, but that is a big game changer, because that was that was kind of a drag in 2021 for the candidates themselves too, where it's like you did not know for days because they were just slowly counting these votes and you didn't know what votes there were. And now we're going to hopefully have both of those problems solved, where the vote counting is going to happen faster. And for the votes that aren't counted fast, we'll have a clearer idea of what they are. So this should be one of New Jersey's more efficient election nights, but we'll see.
The one thing that was nice about 2021 is that almost every county released the results by vote type. Mail-in, early voting, election day, provisional, those four. Because of another law that got passed last year, Title 19, Chapter 63, Section 22. I think I remembered that's correctly. They have to like maintain voter privacy when they report the election results by district now. So therefore, they hide a lot of vote types. For any lawmakers watching this right now, please, I would love to talk to you about clarifying that law. But that's the only less transparent thing I've noticed compared to 2021 with now. Less counties have been transparent with like what kind of vote types are in already. But since they have this new grid that they'll report to Secretary of State, I think it's going to balance it out. But yeah, I just want to say in 2021 we had more granularity of results than we do now usually.
Yeah.
And Joey, before you go to the 4th district, I'll make my usual pitch now, which is, election officials, most of whom are absolutely terrific, and they work really hard, and they do an outstanding job. But they are only following the lead at the top. So what I will say to political appointees who are on boards of elections, please stay there a little later at night and count votes, and don't shut it down at 10 o'clock and say, wow, I'm really tired, we'll come back on Thursday, because it's going to make the 4 of us pretty crazed. And this is Seinfeld fans will get this reference. It's not just that people are casting their votes. You got to be able to count the votes, and it's just frustrating. And look, I mean, again, these are the kind of things I say. Well, there'll be some people who will take offense to it. I'm way too old to care anymore. But New Jersey, for the most part, they run fair elections. They're honest. Elections aren't, unless you're in Patterson in a specific year, elections don't get stolen in New Jersey. They're not bringing in ballots in the middle of the night at these places. So just show your work and be transparent, and people won't criticize you, but count the votes. And if you've got a long night ahead of you, then you got a long night ahead of you, but just count.
I'll give you a theory, which I've gotten a lot of feedback from talking to clerks and boards of elections over the years. They have so many mandates coming at them that they focus on the ones that they are required to meet when they're required to meet them. So because the count wasn't the thing that was mandated, that's the one that slipped. Now that there are requirements around the count, I think we're going to see that one get better, or at least that's what I hope.
I hope you're right.
They were good in the primary, though. Granted, there was nowhere near as many races in the primary. A lot were uncontested, but from my experience, what I remember, they counted all the mail-in ballots they received by election day, by noon the next day. And the only thing outstanding was provisionals, which don't get counted until a week later, and then any late arrival mail ballots, what we call them. So, bottom line is the reforms have done really good, and I approve of them. And yes, like you were saying, the county election officials are all great people, and they all do a great job. And they have a lot of autonomy compared to other states in this country in terms of how they run elections. So I give them a lot of credit.
All right, I'm going to officially move us on from vote counting methods to talk about the 4th district. So I think that the only appropriate place to start in terms of talking about this district is the new map. Because of all the competitive districts, this is the district that by far got worked the most by the new map. So you can see on the right there, looks like the things that were removed aren't that major, but they actually are really major there, especially the removal of Lindenwold, which is a solidly Democratic town that was a big vote anchor for Democrats in this district that's now gone. And in place of it and those 3 other towns, you have these new, big, pretty rural places that are not that friendly to Democrats. You've got Franklin Township in Gloucester County, which is really red. You've got Waterford, which is basically the only red town in all of Camden County. And you've got Buena and Buena Vista, which we already talked about in District 2. So you can see at the bottom, this shifted the district a whole 8 points to the right. It used to be a district that Phil Murphy had won by a small margin. Now it's one that Jack Ciattarelli won by, I believe, 7 points. That's a huge shift. That takes a district that had once been kind of competitive, and Democrats, the race was a little bit close in 2021, but it took it from that level to the level where it's like an absolute no holds barred all out fight between the two parties. Just the one little, the shift that the redistricting commissioners made has completely reshaped this race. And you kind of might be asking, well, if this was a bipartisan deal map, why the hell would they do that? This is a bipartisan deal map where the deal was between Republicans from all around the state and Democrats, specifically from Central and North Jersey, who didn't really give a crap about whether South Jersey Democrats held on to any of their seats, and actually had a pretty vested interest in making it harder for them to hold on to seats. Because when you get to the New Jersey legislature, everybody in the Democratic caucus might all be Democrats, but there's a lot of tension under there. And the biggest source of tension is between South Jersey and everyone else. Senate President Nick Scuteri does not have a good relationship with George Norcross, the South Jersey Democratic boss right now. These district lines are a representation of those difficulties.
Well, you just have to hope. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Joey, but
take it away.
I mean, they may rue the day, right? I mean, I question the strategy of how much harder it gets for you as a party to forge a statewide coalition when you've written off an entire region of the state, and how smart that is ultimately. And I know that they had internal reasons for doing that, their hatred of Norcross. But if they are looking the day after the election at a house that is 1 vote short or 2 votes short, they may really come to regret the changes that they made here. The biggest symptom of the changes that they made in this district is that Fred Madden and Gabby Mosquera opted to retire rather than run in the new district.
Yeah, and this was the district where it seems like so long ago that this map was approved, because there's never been a map that had such an extended on-ramp between passage and election day as this one. It typically, we're typically talking about a map that comes a couple weeks before a filing day. Parties had a lot of time. This was the place where Republicans were high-fiving each other. This was, look at this district. We're going to be able to take this one back. This is great. And there were high expectations, but it is now it's now close. Ryan will talk about some of these VBM numbers that are already in, where they're sort of blowing the doors down. This is expensive. It is, on the Democratic side, a completely recrafted district. There is no incumbent running for his or her own old seat. Paul Moriarty, Democrats made a decision to put Paul Moriarty in for the Senate, despite an 18-year voting record. And I think they did that because Moriarty has shown an ability to win. You had a divisive primary there, where Chris Del Borello won easily against Nick DeSilvio, but there's no kumbayas on the Republican side in this race, and Del Borello's got to deal with that. You've got Matt Walker from the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, that has spent a boatload of money in this race, that has made this maybe even more competitive than in the end it'll turn out to be. One of the things, and this may be on a post-election analysis, but if you ask me how much is being spent in this race, with all due respect to some great reports put out by ELEC, I don't know, because you can't look at how much each campaign has. You can't look at an individual candidate plus their joint account without deducting the transfers. You don't know about party leadership money being spent in these races in county organizations. And in this race in particular, it has had a taint of dark money groups that have exposed, I think, some real flaws in the Election Transparency Act. I think what we're seeing is that Election Transparency Act may have in some ways made things less transparent. And somebody, we don't know who yet, but somebody has figured out how to work that to their disadvantage. And I could go on, and I promise you, Joey, I won't, but I could go on a 20-minute rant about Giuseppe Costanzo phantom candidates that barely know they're running themselves. That a lot of money is being spent to try and move votes off the Republicans.
And hasn't stopped even after it's been exposed.
No, because it's like ha, we can do this. What do we care?
And are the voters of Gloucester Township going to be reading the New Jersey Globe to find out that Giuseppe Costanzo and Maureen Dukes Penrose are in fact phantom candidates?
No,
Most
and
of them have no
they're
idea.
not. They're not, and that's it's that's very much an inside the bubble issue. You've got a district here where Democrats have looked at what their numbers were and said, well, that's a problem for us. We better change it. And again, you've got a third of those Democrats there that are didn't vote in 2019, that are off year election voters. This one's going to be hard. This one's going to be much harder for Republicans than all of us really thought. And it's a confluence of money and it's maybe outside money and a change in the voter pool and a Republican Party that is not completely unified behind their candidate. And look, I mean, you've got Democrats have done a better job of attacking Chris Del Borello and making his family business look like the boogeyman than Republicans have of that sort of that old-fashioned campaign of Paul Moriarty's been there for 18 years and I'm making this number up and has voted to raise taxes 4,706 times. They haven't been able to do that, and they haven't used Phil Murphy as an issue in this campaign. So you don't have any comparisons of Moriarty's voting record to he's voted with Phil Murphy 98% of the time. Sort of that thing we saw last year about voting with Nancy Pelosi. We haven't seen that version of it in this race, and the other, and I've gone on a little too far, but one of the things we're not really talking as much about that we should in terms of context of South Jersey races, then we get into North Jersey is what are the issues? We don't think it's Phil Murphy, but we're talking about Republicans are making this campaign about culture wars, and they're making it about sex education in public schools. They're making it about how schools deal with gender identity issues. They're talking about, they're going to take away my gas stove and they're going to, and I'm going to have to drive an electric car that's not my choice to buy. And they're going to locate migrants in Atlantic County. And Democrats are talking about it's pretty much it's abortion. And I see how that plays in the northern part of the state, but I'm not convinced that that's the issue in some more conservative areas of South Jersey. So, this district, I think Democrats can, it won't surprise me at all if Democrats come out of this with 3 wins. It won't surprise me if it's a split district, but if the Democrats win in the 4th district, it is because their team, and you could put George Norcross at the top of the family tree here, but this team changed the rules, and they changed the rules by increasing the number of Democrats that are voting by mail, and they've increased the amount of spending in this district.
Yeah, they've got over. I mean, Ryan, you talk about it. I mean, this district has had a massive vote by mail number in previous years, but the Democrats' percentage has even gone up here.
Camden in general, it's all because of Camden. It's such a humongous vote by mail county. But yeah, I mean, in terms of where we were at in 2021, E-6, I mean, if I was a Democrat right now, be pretty content. They're doing district wide, they're doing 102% better, slightly better than 2021. Where we at now? I want to clarify where we at now today on E-6. And the Republicans are underperforming slightly in Camden district wide. And Camden makes up most of the district, I believe. So I would think you're in pretty good shape right now if you're a Democrat, hypothetically. We'll see what the election turnout yields. And we know it's not going to be a lot in Camden. Gloucester and Atlantic are highly more election day voting. So I think it's going to depend on that. But I think and also with the mail votes, to get more granular, I'm looking for the Democrats specifically right now. Almost all of the mail votes are coming out of Winslow Township and Washington Township. That's what a humongous bulk of them are the Democratic mail votes are coming from. Which the graphics right there I'm looking at makes sense right there. But I think in terms of overall turnout, I would think if mail voting turnout is it's like parallel to where we were on E-6 in 2021. Let's hope overall turnout would yield the same thing, and then they would win, the Democrats. But at the end of the day, it does come down to what we see on election day. But I would think if I'm a Democrat right now, I'd be pretty happy, especially in Gloucester. They're doing 108% better than 2021 E-6. And the Republicans are, they're doing better in Gloucester as well. They're at 103% compared to E-6 in 2021. But, maybe they might have a high return rate in the next few days. We'll see. But right now on E-6, or because the data is as of yesterday, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, David, your question about how abortion plays in South Jersey is a very long time question. And I would say the towns in the district that behave more rural, you can ask that question and you can say, how does it play in Franklin or in Buena Vista Township? But in the towns in the district that behave as Philadelphia suburbs, which is very much Washington Township or Winslow, those places, Monroe, that's going to be the same way that abortion plays in other suburbs or even other parts of the state. More of that New Jersey suburban voter attitude about abortion, which traditionally has been very protective of those abortion rights.
Yeah, I think the bigger question is sort of in those places, just like in the other districts around the state, how does this issue play in the broader context of, Democrats are trying to make it so that they're trying to campaign. Their campaign message is that if Republicans gain seats in the legislature, then abortion in New Jersey will be under threat. The question is, do voters buy that? Do voters really buy that a Senator Chris Del Borello, as part of a Republican minority in the state Senate, would have any real impact, or even as a Republican majority with a Democratic governor, would have any real impact on New Jersey's pretty strong protections of abortion rights? That's the big test for Democrats. I think in 2022, you saw that Democrats running in federal races were able to make huge leaps and bounds over expectations because of the issue. But that made sense on a federal level. That was clearly where the direction of the campaigns was going. That's clearly a top voter concern. And that's the test now. Democrats are really, really putting it through the ringer in a lot of these districts, this issue. Will voters sort of buy into that? And then the one other issue, go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The one other issue that I would say is important in this district, and I doubt it's top of mind for many voters, but for insiders, it's very important, is senatorial courtesy. So Chris Del Borello is a resident of Gloucester Township, which is in Camden County, confusingly. And if he were to win, that would mean that Republicans get senatorial courtesy over all of Camden County, which would be a massive blow to the sort of Norcross nomination machine, where right now, George Norcross and South Jersey Democrats, they have to do some deal making if they want to get people from most of South Jersey. But in Camden County, if there's a judge that George Norcross wants, he could probably get it, because that's just, that's who the senators are. It's all Democratic senators in the county right now. And, you might have to make a deal with the governor, but it's basically a straight shot. And that is just how nominations work throughout New Jersey. Mm-hmm. It's all about local deal making with the senators and with the local power players. If you have someone like Chris Del Borello, who has obviously no love lost for George Norcross or the South Jersey Democratic machine, and suddenly you have to get his sign off for every single nominee that comes out of Camden County, that overturns the table. Suddenly he's getting his own people in there. He's vetoing Norcross people. He's just gumming up the works. And that'd be just a massive shift for this machine that was once so powerful on these gubernatorial nominations in South Jersey.
Joe Mayer might actually have to take her judgeship at that point in order to keep going. One quick point out, that I wanted to make about the abortion issue. Micah, check my history on this, but I'm sort of going back in time from Madden, Geist, Mathewson, Dalton, Joe Maressa. I think Paul Moriarty might be, if he wins, the first pro-choice senator from this district ever.
He might be. He's certainly the first one who has been comfortable talking about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is a district where Democrats have held these seats for a long time, but 2/3 of that delegation, Senator Madden and Assemblywoman Mascara, are pro-life Democrats. This is, I think Gloucester County, if I remember right, as a county has the third highest percentage of Italian Americans than any other county in the country. This has been a culturally conservative area, and Joey, with your permission, and if you want to shut me down, that's okay. But I do need to rant a little bit about Giuseppe Costanzo, the conservative independent candidate.
Was the connection here Italian? What was the?
But that name, we don't know. But if I were, putting on an old hat and maybe looking at some old dirty tricks or something, and I wanted to run a phantom candidate to pull votes from Chris Del Borello, I would look at Giuseppe Costanzo and say sold. But the part of this that really, I find offensive, which doesn't matter at all, but I think it's offensive as it relates to these phantom candidates is I've been doing political journalism on and off for 23 years. And one of the frustrating things is in the weeks before an election, the calls or the emails from independent candidates saying, hey, can we get some coverage here? And only once in New Jersey history only one independent has ever won an election to the legislature. At least post Civil War, when it was the same two-party structure, they don't win very often. But when you do offer to cover, they are anxious to talk about themselves. I called Giuseppe Costanzo every single day. And I leave, the first time I spoke to him, he was very nice. He said he was at work and he would, we would connect at 6:00 that night. I haven't spoken to him since. He's very adept at avoiding phone calls. And I leave him voicemails. I leave him voicemails every day saying, and I read him, I read him Ryan Dubicki's numbers, and I walk through how many votes have already been cast in his district. And I say, Giuseppe, because now I feel like we're friends. I talk to his answering machine every day. By the way, it lasts exactly 3 minutes and then I'm cut off. So I have to give my pitch to him in 3 minutes or he doesn't hear anymore. But I'll say, Giuseppe, there's what is it? It's almost 19,000 votes have already been cast in your district. And if you want to talk about who you are and what you believe in and what you'd like to do as a senator, now would be a really good time. Because Ryan is teaching me this new term that I love of E-6. I love this. But because it's a really good way of tracking exactly where these numbers are. But on E-6, Giuseppe Costanzo does not want to talk about his campaign. And that raises a whole lot of red flags. I don't necessarily know that that people taking a look at the use of dark money groups, and I have a different definition than some people on dark money. I think it's dark until there's sunlight being shed on it. Until we know who's funding Jersey Freedom, then it's a dark money group, and we don't know. And they have taken every possible step to obfuscate their identities. I attended a virtual court hearing today in an Atlantic County judge's chamber where the Republican State Committee have asked the judge to freeze their money and to stop them from spending anymore. It may not matter. They may have already spent it. They may say, that's pretty funny. We'll freeze the money, but the money's already out the door. We may not get sunlight on this for a very long time, but my pledge for whatever it works is I'm going to call Giuseppe Costanzo every single day, either until he picks up or until I'm dead. So,
okay.
Welcome to New Jersey, Giuseppe. That's it.
There are more not by a lot, but there are more unaffiliated voters who are casting early votes in this district than most of the other districts in the state. It's only splitting hairs, but it's a greater rate of participation than in other districts.
Yeah, it's interesting, but sadly, it's not significant enough yet. But inevitably, early voting will grow in New Jersey. It's going to happen.
Oh no, I'm saying, could they be independents? Could they be?
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So the next three districts on our chronology here, 5, 6, 7, I don't think any of us are going to have much to say about any of them. Mm-hmm. They're kind of the core of the South Jersey Democratic machine. Even when South Jersey Democrats are falling apart everywhere else, those three districts are completely fine. It's Camden is the 5th district, Cherry Hill is the 6th district, and then like the Delaware River areas of Burlington County are the 7th district. The one thing that I'll say about this is in the 7th district, you've got all three legislators either already running or publicly contemplating a run for Congress, which is sort of unusual, where you see literally an entire ticket of legislators both running for re-election and then potentially running for Congress in a couple months after that. So that's, you got Carol Murphy already in the race, Herb Conaway very interested in the race, Troy Singleton also a potential candidate. That doesn't really have that much to do with this year's election because they're all going to win easily. But it is just sort of interesting to see the calm before the storm in that particular area.
I'll bite on one tiny thing. Ryan, is it true? I saw this in your report.
What?
Is the election already more than half over in District 6? We've already got more than half the vote in. It's like 51% of the votes in.
With compared to 2021, you mean?
I'm looking at 20. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Let's see.
If not, it's close, right?
It's close. So, and I have. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong tab. I have a million tabs open.
I'm not. I don't want to make you look for numbers. But
no. Yeah. So
it's amazing to think about the election being half over a week out.
Yeah, we're glad. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Micah, we're close. So, on E-6 in 2021, we were at 27,000 total advance, and today we're at 24,000. So, I mean, it's not over, but yeah, it's narrow. It's similar to 2021. I'm not sure where you're finding that it's almost over though. Are you talking about compared to the official?
No, I mean, I don't belabor the point. All I'm saying is that, half the votes are in.
Oh,
half the votes that we're going to see are in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I'm looking at, I have like projections now of total turnout. That's not more of my colleagues do total expected turnout, but yeah, roughly I would say half the votes in already especially because LD6 it's pretty advanced voting. LD, in 2021 is 49% of the vote was advanced, and then in 2022 is 50%. So yeah, roughly by election day, half the votes will already be in that district. Absolutely.
Okay, next up, LD8. So this is a district that was I believe it was the most expensive and it was sort of widely regarded to be the most competitive race of 2021, where you saw State Senator Dawn Adiego, who was a party switcher. She had been a Republican and then she defected to Democrats in 2019. She was trying to run for re-election for the first time as a Democrat. Republicans were really all out on defeating her. I mean, there was it was partially just we want a seat back, but it was partially she betrayed us and we want to take her down. There was really a personal element to that race. And Republicans won. Gene Stanfield beat Adiego. Republicans held on to their 2 assembly seats. And then, as you can see here in redistricting, they kind of consolidated that win. They took their narrow win there and said, we want to hold on to this district. We want this still to be ours. They've never actually lost an election in it going back to 1973, even though there have been 2 different party switchers. And that's kind of resulted in a race this year, at least in my opinion, that could be close. I would be really surprised if Democrats won. I think you had all of the stars aligning a bit in 2021, except for obviously that the statewide results were not good for Democrats. But in general, you had an actual Democratic incumbent and you had all this money being spent and Democrats still fell short. Now you've got this redder district where Democrats aren't really caring as much. And I don't really see how the math works out for them. But this is still clearly part of the playing field. South Jersey Democrats are still spending money. And then the one other dynamic that I'll mention before I pass it over to other people. So you can see on the right here, on the left, you've got a nice, happy, smiling ticket of 3 Republicans who are all together and liking each other. And then on the right, you've got 2 different pictures because the Democratic Senate candidate, who is a last-minute replacement candidate who beat the South Jersey Democrats' preferred candidate, I'm saying the word candidate a lot, at a special convention, is not their friend. They do not like her. They have decided to completely cut her off. She's getting no South Jersey Democratic funding. You will see literature that goes out with just the 2 assembly candidates on it. It'll say Katz and Angelosi for assembly, and as if there's just no other race on the ballot. So it's a bit of a rough campaign for Democrats. I mean, it's not. So I was doing some Facebook scrolling earlier today to look for photos. They haven't totally cut off communication. There have been some moments where the 3 candidates have campaigned together, but it very much is something where South Jersey Democrats want these 2 assembly seats, and they have said, screw it with the Senate seat. So I think all that combines for a race that it was the top tier race in 2021, and it's definitely not that this year.
This is one of those races that I think the hard work of the candidates, I mean, Angelosi and Katz, they've knocked on a lot of doors, a lot of shoe leather. And I think they've attracted some attention from the South Jersey Democrats who said, we're going to reward that and we're going to get behind that. And we're not going to miss out on that if there's something going on that we don't know about. But I don't think they would have been on the radar screen if they hadn't been working as hard as they did.
Yeah, I agree. And this was Democrats have put a little bit of money in there. I think when I say Democrats, I'm not talking about the leadership PACs. The Senate president, the Assembly Speaker aren't playing really in South Jersey. They don't need financial help there. So I think the non-retired George Norcross-led organization has put about $500,000 into this race. This is one where if it was, if the issues were all lining up for Democrats, you might say, yeah, maybe they could pick off an assembly seat, but Latham Tiver is pretty strong. I mean, he's a former freeholder. He was never a county commissioner, but a former freeholder. But more importantly, is his day job as a leader of operating engineers 825, and they are they have a chance to put one of their union brothers into the Senate, and that's a hugely important thing for Greg Lalevin, Mike McCursky, and the group there, and Tiver. This has caused some splits among the building trades. 825 has left the building trades over the way that Democrats were treating Tiver, but without a switch to the candidate they really wanted, they're just not investing as much. This was a fail at a really local level. I am, and this doesn't. I hope this isn't a harbinger of things to come for me. But I'm drawing a blank on the name of the person that Gay Burton beat at the convention. That Janet DeFalco. And Janet DeFalco, was school board member, but more importantly, her husband, a former mayor, works at a local small business called Connor Strong in Buccaloo. So we could have seen that tie there. That maybe if it were her, they might have invested more. This is for Democrats in South Jersey. This is the bridesmaid district. And although they've tried, not till John Sweeney won one of the 3 legislative seats in the 1973 Watergate landslide has there been a Democratic victory here? And there's not a whole. Would I be shot? On a level of I'm going to try and use a Joey Fox sounding word here, but on a level of shockiness, if a Democrat won one of the picked off an assembly seat in this district, it would be. It would be less shocking to me than when Ed Durr won, which is sort of a way of saying you never know. But I think Republicans are in a good campaign here, and I don't see any reason why this is going to change.
Yeah, I would just say for advanced voting, it's a very low advanced voting district. Only in both 2021 and 2022, only 30% of the vote was not cast on election day. One good thing I would say Angelosi and Katza and Byrne have going for them is that there are more Democrats win by mail this year than 2021 and 2022. Of the mail votes of E-6, both 2021 and 2022. Only 61% of the mail votes were Democrat, and now this year it's 63%. So the percentage of Democrats in the mail votes, it's better for them, but it's such a small advance voting state. I'm not sure that really is significant enough, but I would say it's a perk for their get out the vote effort.
Yeah, Brian, are you able to tell what the Atlantic County portion is to which is really Hamilton?
Yeah. That's where Angelosi lives too, I believe. But what about Atlantic?
So in Atlantic, in the 8th district, which is Hamilton, that's where Angelosi is from. He is the president of the local teachers union there. Are there any signs in the Atlantic portion that Democrats might be cracking that Hamilton block?
If they are, it's because he lives there. It's such a small percentage of the district. I'm not sure what turnout would imply there, honestly, for the whole race. But let me calculate real quick. So, for mail ballots in Atlantic County specifically, like district-wide is 63%. But then for Atlantic County, it's only 48%. It's a lot of unaffiliated voters are voting by mail in Atlantic County for that district. So a bulk of their turnout is coming from Burlington. That's what's yielding the district-wide percentage of.
Well, David, remember that's where the operating engineers got mad at the Democrats over doing the vote by mail request, right? So we could be seeing the evidence of that in the boost among Burlington Democrats.
Yeah.
Wait, they didn't want that, Micah? Or
the operating engineers did not want the South Jersey Democrats mailing
requests,
vote by mail requests into the Burlington Democrats.
And to be clear, too, it wasn't the South Jersey Democrats that were doing it. It was an arm of the South Jersey Democrats, which is Bill Mullen, the president of the building trades, umbrella group of trade unions. They felt that the building trades union was generating votes that might be used against one of their own members, and that's what upset them. And that's going to be a wound that's not going to be easily healed.
And ironically, now it was all in service of a Senate candidate who South Jersey Democrats aren't even supporting.
Yeah,
they didn't know that at the time, but it was all for nothing. Okay, I think that covers the 8th district pretty well. 9th and 10th districts are both Ocean County districts, deep red. They had some interesting stuff happen in the primary. Honestly, for a lot of these safe districts, just go read the voter's guide. I've got it all in there. Have a fun time with it. Make some tea. Sit down with it. We're here to talk about the real races.
Good.
But yeah, so in the 9th and 10th district, you had some interesting primaries where George Gilmore, who is the now and also former chair of the Ocean Republicans, he's got a whole long backstory. He kind of made a play to try to increase his influence in both districts. It worked in the 9th district and it didn't work in the 10th district. Some really interesting stuff there. The one thing that is happening in 5 days in the area that's notable is the Toms River mayor's race, which maybe is the most interesting, at least big city local election this year, where you had the incumbent mayor come in 3rd place in the Republican primary. This sort of bombastic party switching councilman named Dan Roderick, Republican councilman named Dan Roderick. He was a Democrat until, 2019, 2018, something pretty recently. He's the Republican nominee. You've got the Democratic nominee, who is Congressman Andy Kim's district director. Andy Kim no longer represents Toms River, but he did for a while. And it's all that race is all about whether Roderick is sort of controversial enough and Ben Giovine, the Democratic nominee, is a good enough candidate to overcome Toms River's natural Republican lean. So that's the interest there. I don't know if any of you have any further comments on that, but the legislative races are deep red. There's nothing dramatic.
Giovine's a good candidate, but I don't see any signs that Toms River is going to go Democrat this year.
I'm from Toms River. No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's red. Toms River is very red. And I remember I'm from Ward 1 in Toms River. And I remember, like, I don't live there anymore, but my parents still do. And I remember, I remember how the primary was so contested. I remember when my parents got their sample ballot, it had the wrong election day polling place on it because the polling place got knocked down. So my parents called the Board of Elections saying, "Hey, this is the wrong polling place." And then the Board of Elections said, "Oh yeah, you're not the first person to to mention this to us." So I knew right away that would be a high turnout, nasty primary. And I'll also say, this is from what I'm hearing on the ground in LD10, where I'm from, Toms River. A lot of people got angry at, Maurice Hill, Mo Hill, the mayor. And I think the whole council in general. I'm not saying if this is true or not, but like a lot of them got mad because of the high Jewish population has overtaken Toms River too. A lot of voters took that to personally. They claim it's devaluing their property. I'm not validating that whatsoever. But that's also what drove out a nasty primary, what made him lose his job, in my opinion.
And that's a very complicated dynamic in that whole part of the state where non-Jewish and specifically non-Orthodox Jewish politicians kind of message around like, watch out, the Orthodox are coming, but they can't quite say that. So they have to sort of frame it in these like, we stand against development in Toms River type messaging. And it's a very tiptoey.
We stand against Lakewood development.
Yes, and Lakewood developers.
Lakewood
that's a big old.
Yeah, Lakewood is a dog whistle down there. And
in this case, Giovine has been put into the box of being with development. And Roderick has carved himself out as the anti-development guy. And so he's kind of on the right side or of these dog whistles, from if you're going to play to them.
Hey, Joey, would it be okay with you? And this is yours, so I don't want to make the call, but maybe go from now to 30.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Start heading north and Mike and I can spend an hour and a half talking about how ridiculous it is that District 30 is down there, but it is what it is. But
there's a whole story, right?
Yeah.
I think the story is just this is the part of the state that was growing the fastest in population. And so this district used to be in Newark, and it one redistricting cycle. It was the 2001 cycle, maybe.
It was 91. They literally took the 30th, eliminated it in Essex County and moved it down because it was just easier for them to not. Legislators don't like having their districts renumbered. It is the most ridiculous thing in the world. So
we don't either at AP. It's confusing for building a database and incumbent tables.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I appreciate it, because if they had decided to move the 30th district this year to be the 11th district, which is what it should be, like theoretically, and that meant that literally every single district after the 11th district, you had to shift up one in your head, like, oh, LD11 is now LD12, LD12 is now LD13. I think we would have all gone crazy. So,
hey, Joey, I made an impassioned plea to the redistricting commission, to Judge Karchman and to Jones and Barless, asking him to do exactly that. So, let's, it shows.
This is a sign, everybody.
New Jersey Globe, we allowed dissent.
Yes, exactly.
And we don't all have to be lemmings walking in the same direction.
And I feel no need to defer to my boss who controls my paycheck. I say what I mean. So the 30th district, you might be looking at this map and saying, well, why the hell is this a competitive district? This is deep red. There is no sign that this is a district that would ever think about supporting a Democrat. And the answer is, well, maybe they'll support this Democrat. So basically the gambit here is in Lakewood, which is the aforementioned heavily Jewish town that has become a dog whistle in much of the rest of the area. Lakewood itself is overwhelmingly Orthodox Jewish. And that is just that's who controls the town. That's the Orthodox leaders have a tremendous amount of sway, and it is that is where the political power lies. And this year, Orthodox leaders decided, hey, we've got all this political power here, but we don't have it all that much in Trenton because we keep on electing the slate of Republican legislators who are perfectly fine and we like them. But we keep on electing the slate of Republican legislators who are then stuck in the minority in Trenton and who fight their little fights and then aren't able to ultimately accomplish as much as they would if we had someone in the majority. And so they sort of, Rabbi Avi Schnall comes from that group. He is I'm going to get the name wrong, but he's the former leader of the Agadah Israel of America, New Jersey.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm waiting for Shlomo Shore to text me, giving me the exact name. So
okay,
that'll happen soon. But.
Yes, if you want to learn more about this district, somehow find Shlomo Shore's number and give him a call. So, but yeah, so Schnall, he's not like a dedicated Democrat. I don't think he was a registered Democrat until recently, but he is the chosen nominee of the Orthodox community to try to make this dent into the Democratic majority and give Lakewood and the Orthodox Jewish community an official voice in the legislature, or an official voice in the legislative majority. And in order to do that, they had to choose a specific assemblyman to try to take down. So the Orthodox community is giving a free pass to 2 of the 30th district incumbents. It's Senator Bob Singer and Assemblyman Sean Keene, and then saying, Ned Thompson, you're going down. And the real question is here. So here's the candidates. I'll go back to the district map. Can they do it in a district that looks like this, in a district that is this red? Can they take this sort of Lakewood political community that has not really been activated for a campaign like this and turn it into actual political power? And especially enough political power to overwhelm the rest of this district, which, as you can see, is still quite red, regardless of what Lakewood does. And in fact, might get even redder because of that scare campaign of, when you start talking about the developers, when you start talking about the Lakewood influence, that scares voters in Howell even further away from whatever Lakewood is trying to do. So I've talked too much, but this is just a crazy campaign. One that didn't even look like it was going to happen for a while. Schnall didn't run, and then in August was like, actually, I will run. So this has been like a 2-month sprint, and I don't think anybody really knows what's going to happen.
Well, I would say really quick, I mean, my numbers, while I love compiling this data, it doesn't predict the future, but it's one of the very few districts where Republicans have more mail votes than Democrats. So somehow Republicans have made this advanced voting more about them than Democrats. But, in terms of pass vote, it's also a very low advanced voting district. Only 25% was advanced in 2021 and 2020 and 28 in 2022. So again, like election day will determine this race. But if I'm a Republican right now, if you see more mail votes than Democrats, like you're pretty happy. I would think.
No, you got to be careful about that, because if you are a normally registered Republican in Lakewood, who normally votes Republican 100% of the time, but you're going to vote for Avi this time, then you're carrying that normal registration that you carry with you, but you're casting a vote for the Democrats. So this is an area where I don't think we can really get a lot out of the partisan leanings that we see, the partisan registrations that we see, because it's all about Lakewood turnout, and Lakewood turnout is largely registered Republicans.
Yeah. And you also don't know, is there going to be this big Orthodox push on election day to get this sort of like oftentimes underactivated electorate out to the polls? We don't know. We don't know how successful that effort is going to be, because we don't really have any kind of historical precedent for what it looks like when Lakewood tries to flex its political muscle, and if it can.
Lakewood has not yet embraced advanced voting. They haven't embraced vote by mail. They haven't embraced early voting, and so if Brian Stack were to somehow clone himself and go to Lakewood and run Avi Schnall's campaign, then Brian Stack gets it. It's about banking votes. If Mickey Quinn were up there, it's about banking votes in advance. Unless Sunday is a big early vote day, unless there's some secret plan of and God, I may be walking into a huge trap here. I don't, I'm Jewish, and I don't know if I can say this, but is souls to the polls something that I can say regarding Orthodox Jews? Because if they're going, if the Orthodox community is going to do souls to the polls on Sunday, and they with a little bit of organization, they can bring a couple thousand people out on Sunday without a problem. But we'll know on Monday. Monday, Ryan, is E-1.
Yeah.
Okay, so on E-1, we will know if they made any push at all to do early voting in Lakewood on Sunday. I'm stating the obvious, which is that they're not going to do early voting on Friday or Saturday. So if they do it on Sunday, otherwise we're looking at election day, and we're looking about whether you got lines of voters in Lakewood. This is from the beginning, Joey. I think I was initially a little more optimistic back on Schnall 1.0 in the before filing day when this might have been a possibility. You sort of brought me back to earth on this and told me this may be numbers wise the most Republican district in the state, more so than even the Sussex County district.
I mean, it depends on what election you're looking at, and that's actually that's a good segue to quickly talk about another thing, which is, so you see this 2021 gubernatorial election here. Lakewood is sort of medium red. That's despite the Orthodox leadership backing Phil Murphy.
Right.
And that's probably not a good indicator for what's going to happen this year, just because backing some non-Jewish Democrat from outside the district is like a very different thing than supporting one of your own local people. And the endorsement itself is not necessarily what's going to do this, but like the entire sort of community coming together towards this. But it's still like, it shows that even in Lakewood, this might be a little bit of a lift. And then it's especially a lift to try to get it to do enough to overcome the rest of the district. I mean, in the voters guide, we rated this district a toss-up, in part just because we don't really know what's going to happen. It's just, this is, again, without historical precedent. This is a campaign that no one has ever really seen before. And we thought that warranted a rating of uncertainty. But it's really hard for Democrats. Ned Thompson, no slouch. I mean, he's been a friend of Lakewood for years. They're breaking with him sort of out of necessity this year, but it's not like he's some outsider newcomer. So yeah, we'll have to find out. I think on election night, you could totally see a situation where Schnall just loses by a lot, and it turns out to have been kind of nothing. But there's also a situation where it does go somewhere.
And a big part of this too is how good a job Ned Thompson does in bringing, is saying, well, here's my worst case scenario. Here's what could happen to be in Lakewood. The only way I inoculate myself from a defeat is to make sure that Howell and Republican towns on the Monmouth side come out and vote. And if Howell and Wall are showing up, and he's able to deliver Republican turnout there, then I think he'll be fine. But if the Howell Wall side is a typical off year Republican turnout, and Lakewood, and Schnall is able to develop a big turnout in Lakewood and move a lot of numbers, that's his perfect storm.
Yeah.
And he's a good candidate, but Thompson's run a bunch of times too, and they're not targeting Bob Singer, the senator from Lakewood, and they're not targeting Sean Keane, who voted for the budget, and Singer voted for the budget, and Thompson didn't. And the politics of Lakewood is very simple, which is they need legislators who are going to bring state dollars into the town. And they feel that having somebody in the caucus, in the majority caucus, will be able to do that. And you look at, I'll go off on a limb for a second, so reel me in very quickly, Joey. But what is Lakewood's best case scenario is Democrats control the assembly, but not by a 7-seat margin, by a 1 or a 2 or a 3 vote margin, where Avi Schnall, as a member of that caucus, is able to say, you need me, here's what I need in return.
Yeah.
And that's sort of a big deal. That's what they're looking for. If you had a Democratic assemblyman from Lakewood, and you went back to 2017 numbers, where they had where they had an abundance of seats. That was probably the biggest problem for the Democrats in the first 2 years of the Murphy administration, is he had too many Democrats. Then he wouldn't be powerful. But Schnall's best case scenario is to somehow, under the radar as best as he can, get huge turnout in Lakewood. Howell and Wall do perform as they usually would in an off year election, and then it's a lighter Democratic majority.
Yeah. We ready to move on to District 11?
Yeah.
Backwards in numbers, but forwards in geography.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it? Oh, for God's sake. That's okay. So I think that everybody here will probably be in agreement that in addition to the 4th district, this is sort of the other big race this year. It's the only district in the state. I'll immediately flip to the people so you can see. It's the only district in the state where you have incumbents of both parties. Actually, that's not quite true because of a weird asterisk situation in District 12. But really, it's the only district in the state where you have incumbents elected from different parties. You've got Vin Gopal, who's on the far left there, is the state senator. And then you've got Marilyn Paperno and Kim Ulner, who are the Republican assemblywomen. They each won very narrow races in 2021. Gopal won re-election by like 4 points in a race that was closer than people thought. He had flipped the seat in 2017. Paperno and Ulner beat 2 Democratic Assembly incumbents that no one really thought were going to lose. And now both parties are saying, okay, well, we've got our foot in the door in this way, and we want the whole district. Gopal's got his running mates, Marty Donlan and Luann Peterpaul. The Republicans found Steve Dinistrian, who's a former public relations executive, to be their Senate candidate. And I think everybody kind of agrees that this is a real barn burner race. It's the most expensive race in the state. You've got millions and millions of dollars, most of it Democratic money. You can see geography-wise that it's a light red district in terms of 2021 numbers. It's a light blue district in terms of most other numbers. But 2021 was obviously a more favorable year for Republicans. And one other note that I'll make before I pass it on is that not many towns moved in redistricting, but there were pretty important towns that moved. You had one deep red town, West Long Branch, leave the district. You had 2 more competitive towns, Fairhaven and Bradley Beach, join it. Makes it about a point more Democratic. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that probably would have been enough to save one or maybe both Democratic Assembly members in 2021. Just those little shifts would have probably been enough on their own. So that's the state of play here. I mean, I think because both parties have incumbents at stake, everyone is just going all out for it.
Well, I'll say that from the moment that we got the outcome 2 years ago, Gopal knew that he was going to have to work every minute of every day.
Yeah.
And he has. And he's left no stone unturned. And he's brought a lot of money home to the district, as you would expect. And he's run a very smart race, almost boutique races, where he's letting every town know exactly what he did in that town. So we talked earlier about 22 mailers. It would not surprise me if Gopal's had 30 or 40 mailers by the time you carve it up into each town and what the impact he's been able to deliver for each town. So it's a very highly hyper-targeted campaign that he's been running, highly relevant, he hopes, to the voters in each of those towns, the issues that matter to them. And it's a real contrast. It's almost the way he's answering the culture war issues, the education issues, the parental issues, the wind issues. He's answering it back with, this is what I'm doing in your town. I would say also the early vote, the blend of early votes, he has to be encouraged by. It's one of those districts that's about to go over its 21 totals.
Yeah.
And the blend is also more Democratic and less Republican. So Ryan, you can speak more to that, but I see that as next to 3, this is probably the real success story in terms of the early vote so far in the state.
Yeah, so for mail voting specifically, they're actually right on track with E-6 in 2021. I'm looking at 10,600 on E-6 in 2021. Right now we're at 10,346, so roughly the same. What surprised me though is especially in Monmouth County, given it's such a high in-person early voting county, it's the highest in the state right now. It's in this district specifically, it's almost 1,700 early votes less than where we were at in 2 years ago in E-6 in 2021. Like in 2021, there was 4,600 in-person early votes, and now there's only 3,200 in that district. So in-person early voting is, I mean, while it's insignificant, it is way down compared to where we were in 2021. Same in 2022, there were almost 5,000 in-person early votes cast at this time on E-6. Now, like, they're only 3,200. So in-person early voting is not doing great right now. Mail voting is on par with both 2021 and 2022. Whether election voting will make up for that remains to be seen. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's not the greatest in terms of early voting turnout right now, I would say, Micah.
I watched Governor Phil Murphy vote early in this district live in 2021.
Yeah.
I was there.
I think Monmouth Republicans have given up on in-person early voting. I think, Vin is actually ahead, Democrats, I should say, not Vin, but there are more Democrats who have voted early in person than Republicans. That wasn't the case in the first 2 years. Monmouth Republicans liked in-person early voting. Yeah. I don't think they're driving it this time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it could be that. Yeah, I was looking like overall term, but yeah, partisan skew, I would agree. Yeah, no, it's more Democrats are more. They're not really controlling in-person early voting, I would say, in Monmouth, but they're taking more charge than they did previously.
So, David,
this is just a great. This is a great race because this is a seat that Republicans, had taken away from them when Gopal ran an aggressive campaign in a decent year in 2017 and won decisively against Jen Beck. It wasn't close, and the last election, we look at this as a split district, but there's a very important footnote to the 2021 race that over time is going to get lost, and that is that while 2 Democratic incumbents lost by under 400 votes, you had a spoiler in that race. You had a Green Party candidate, so not a Phantom candidate, but a candidate of a minor party who didn't spend any money, didn't really make much of an impact. But there's a brand name to the Green Party that most people think if they weren't there, those voters would go to the Democrats. And she won about 1,200 votes in that election. So about 3 times the Republican margin of victory. Had there not been an independent, I think you might be looking at sort of the same lineup again. The other thing is I look at this. I mean, Gopal is a great incumbent in terms of being a guy who is spending his entire term frightened that he knows that this is a district that he can lose. And, for old guys like me, not as old, but older than you two, and Micah, we'll take a guy who's afraid of losing every single day of the week because they're focused. I thought it was initially a good sign when some of the people that the Republicans wanted the most declined to run. And, one thing that we can, that hasn't come up yet that may not in this conversation is Republicans didn't do the best job in terms of recruitment. They didn't get their A-list candidates, but Denistrian's turning out to be a good candidate in the sense that, except for some, his representation of a company on offshore or shore wind that turned out to be embarrassing. The fact that he's an unknown, that he doesn't have a record, might be to his advantage. There hasn't been a lot to attack there. He's very definitely avoided the abortion issue. Here we are, D-6. We don't know if Steve Denistrian is pro-life or pro-choice because he's declined to say so. and that hasn't come out. And he's got the benefit of being, on a ticket with two assemblywomen that, also knew from the moment they took office that they were at the very top of the Democratic target list. So they've been working too. Again, this is we'll see what happens on Tuesday night. Wouldn't surprise me if Democrats, swept. I'd be a little more surprised if Republicans swept, and it wouldn't surprise me if this was another split district where with all this money being spent and all this campaign activity that it virtually remains the same. The issues have not broken in this district, I think, toward the Democrats. They've been very good to the Republicans. This is a district where I think that the culture war issues are playing more to their advantage. One of the questions that I have, I don't know. I don't live there. I don't know. But Gopal has distanced himself from his party on some of these issues. He when whales started washing up on the shore of his district, he was a no vote on Orsted's $1 billion subsidy. He has spoken out against some of the decisions by the State Board of Education. He has voted like a swing district incumbent, would typically vote.
His campaign staff told the Asbury Park Press that he was technically a Democrat.
Yeah. Wow. But what we've seen Denistrian do is sort of power through that. He's banking on the fact that people are voting party and they don't know that Gopal has cast different votes. He's running as though Gopal is got an identical record to Phil Murphy. And at a time where you really don't know these differences, the question is whether that campaign is going to be effective. This is a tough one. This is really a tough one. And you hear Gopal. I don't know about what the campaign staff said. I hadn't seen that, but this is a guy who was a Democratic county chairman. This was a guy who was a teenage Democrat working on campaigns, and
he's not technically a Democrat. He is.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
He's not someone who you can really call technically a Democrat. This guy is a Democrat.
No, but he's not following the Democratic line, but he's certainly there on the abortion issue. This is an interesting contrast between these six candidates, and I'll tell you, the good thing is this is what elections are supposed to be: is giving voters a choice, having a good campaign being run by both sides, and we'll see. I don't know. It could be a 1-seat pickup. I don't. On the assembly side, I have no idea, and I don't know. I'm hearing a lot of optimism from both sides, and when both sides are optimistic, it drives me to a place of uncertainty.
I can't wait to see the first set results, because Monmouth County releases all their mail and early votes at one dump before all the election day votes. So I'm curious to see what those margins are going to look like before the election day votes are coming in.
Anyone have any objections if I move on?
Nope.
So I think I'll make one brief note about the 12th district, which is that was the asterisk that kept me from saying that this is the only district with a split delegation, because the 12th district has Democratic State Senator Sam Thompson, who switched parties at the beginning of this year because Republicans were going to dump him from the line. And this guy is 88 years old, and he said, "I'm a Democrat now." So that's been an interesting saga this year, but it's not actually relevant for the election because it's a deep red district. He's retiring. That's over. But that was definitely, for a few days this year, that was like the story in New Jersey politics, is what the hell is Sam Thompson doing? I mean, I went to the State House. He announced that on like a Sunday night during the Super Bowl. I was in the State House the very next day. The vibes were so strange. It's the weirdest day I've ever been in the State House. Everyone was just completely off kilter and like whispering in hallways. It was wild, but that is no longer really part of the story now. the world has largely moved past that.
Yeah. And when we say the Republicans need to pick up 6 seats to win the Senate, they really need to win 5 because Owen Henry is, that seat's coming back. It's not
technically they currently have 15 seats, but they're guaranteed to pick up 1. Yeah. So I think the next district is worth talking about, and we don't have to spend a ton of time on it because I think that it's sort of at the edge of the playing field. But we've got the 14th district here. And as you can see from the left map, it's a fairly blue district. I mean, Jack Chiarelli only won 1 town in the entire district. But it has a reputation for being sort of like a moderate competitive district. And it was a competitive district as recently as like 2013 or so. And you've also got an open seat this year. So that means that, Tennille McCoy, who is the Democrat on the right, she doesn't have the name recognition that the other incumbents do. She is not a known quantity in the district the way that Linda Greenstein and Wayne DeAngelo are. And Adam Elias, the Republican on the left there, is making a fairly serious run at her. And Republicans, I wouldn't necessarily call them super optimistic about this race, but they definitely, they've got it in their eye. They're looking at something here and saying, this is not nothing. This is definitely some place where you could see something happen. But again, the math there is really tough for them. It's a district that's based in Hamilton Township and Monroe Township, which are both light blue. Even in a scenario where Republicans win both of those towns, which they haven't done in a while, they would then still have to win them by enough to overcome the other blue parts of the district. It's just, it's rough territory. And I think that the fact that they're not able to be super competitive here is sort of a broader sign that this is probably not going to be the year where they are able to get a majority. That would probably come from a district like this. And that doesn't seem like that's where things are headed. But I keep on saying one thing and then saying but to it and then saying but to that and saying but to that. But it's still a district that both sides are keeping an eye on. And what do you guys think? Does this seem like someplace where there is a realistic possibility that Republicans can make something happen?
Well, we start with the Senate. One thing about Linda Greenstein is she has crazy glued her foot to the gas pedal for the last 24 years. She beat incumbents in 1999, and she beat an incumbent senator in 2010 in a special election. She never ever takes her foot off the gas, and that's her personality. So she is running scared because she always runs scared.
That's right.
But I look at I look at this district and there's one glaring anomaly is the guy in the center, Wayne DeAngelo, Hamilton candidate, building trades guy, but if he wins, likely to be with the retirements of Fred Madden and Gabby Mascara and Tom Giblin and Joe Egan, Wayne DeAngelo, could very well be the last surviving pro-life Democrat.
There's actually there's also likely to be Gary Scher.
Gary Scher too. But in a district that could swing, Democrats haven't been able to make the abortion issue the prime issue like they have in other battleground areas because they've got a pro-life candidate. That being said, I think DeAngelo is going to be fine there, and he's had some problems with his own party because he's famously didn't get along with his running mate Dan Benson, who's going to be the next county executive. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He clinched that when he won that convention by a decisive margin. But I don't see Greenstein or DeAngelo in trouble. Tennille McCoy, I don't know if she's in trouble, but she's an unknown quantity there, and they're trying, but the Republicans just they didn't score some home run recruits. Elias ran last time, and he's running pretty hard, but it's basically his own money there, and there's this little asterisk in this district, which is this Republican slate are more are more Spadia Republicans, in that Bill Spadia has campaigned for them. They share consultants, and as a result, you really haven't seen money from the Republican leadership committees going into the 14th. So Elias has a TV ad up where he went pretty hard at Tennille McCoy, but I think he only got about $50,000 on cable behind that. So, the lack of support from the party, if this becomes a close race, if Adam Elias on election night is just narrowly behind Tennille McCoy, we look at this and we say, wow, this could have been winnable had the other faction of the Republican Party said, well, we don't care that you're a Spadia Republican. We're going to back you because we want to try and win more seats and win some of those votes. And, you get to an assembly where if the Republicans wind up at, 30, 37, 38 in a poor perfect world, and they narrowly lose this, I think there's going to be a lot of criticism coming at the Republican establishment for not backing this ticket. Then again, if it's a blowaway, then it was going to be a blowaway.
And we should say that the controversy with Tennille McCoy has to do with comments she made as a state employee, state supervisor. There are more state workers in this district than any other one. So, you start out with the antenna going up for state employees to begin with. And it's also a very blue collar, at least Hamilton is a very blue collar community. And so the issue of race and employment is one that, they may perk up and pay attention to as well. So at least that's what Elias is playing for, is state employees and those blue collar people in Hamilton.
Although it's also notable that Hamilton, I feel like this isn't part of Hamilton's image as a town, but it's growing increasingly diverse. I lived in Trenton. When I lived in New Jersey, I lived in Trenton. And you would get to the sort of inner parts of Hamilton that bordered Trenton. And it was a continuation of Trenton. It's very Latino. It had some pockets of a pretty large Black community too. And Tennille McCoy would be the first person of color to ever represent this district. And I actually don't know Adam Elias's ethnic background, but I believe he would be as well.
He would be, yeah.
So that's a little bit of a dynamic too. I think that people like to think of this district as sort of this classic white working class-ish suburban district, but it's actually very diverse. It's only like 53% white. Plainsboro is very Asian. Hightstown and East Windsor, Hightstown in particular, has a big Latino population. Hamilton is getting more diverse. So it's a district that is different than I think some people sort of have the image of it in their minds.
Well, Robbinsville is very diverse as well. But that's what Elias is playing at. He's playing to with this issue.
Right. Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
The question is how effective that is in a district that is becoming increasingly diverse.
Yeah.
All right. So I think District 15 can be safely moved past. Trenton, safe Democratic, no new people there, which leads us to District 16. So, you know what? I've done a lot of introductions. Does anyone else want to introduce the concept of the 16th legislative district to the masses?
Well, it's a rematch, right? We can start there, right? At least at the Senate level, it's a rematch. And it's going to be Zwicker versus Pappas again. So let's see. Sadr Jaffer decided to opt out. One of the assemblywomen, first-term assemblywoman, decided she did not like the Trenton culture. She didn't like the legislative culture, and she opted not to run for re-election. And so Michelle Drulis has replaced her on the Democratic ticket with Roy Freeman, right? Let's see, who wants to go on? Who wants to go from there?
Well, I mean, look, this is again, you always love a rematch, but this is an attempt of a political comeback from Michael Pappas, and Michael Pappas and I started out, we're about the same age. I think he's a year older than I am, and we we were both young mayors together back in the early 80s when we were in our early 20s. And, one of the things I used to hear from people is, why can't you be more like Pappas? He's got his act together. Pappas had a meteoric rise, as a 20-something-year-old office holder, becoming a Somerset County freeholder and then a congressman. And he had a that was a pretty Republican district, that old 12th district. And he lost it in 98 to Rush Holt, really for two reasons. One is the attempt to impeach Bill Clinton sort of backfired. It was Newt Gingrich's, going after Social Security, but it was Michael Pappas. It was one moment that he doesn't shy away from, where he went to the floor of the House because somebody, either in leadership or the NRCC, asked him to sing a song, Twinkle, Twinkle, Kenneth Star. And it went, 1998 viral, which means, it got played on all the cable news and network news stations. And all of a sudden, this guy from the science department at Princeton University named Rush Holt, won. And this is Pappas's opportunity to come back
against a different guy from the Princeton University.
Exactly. And Zwicker is energetic and he's smart, and he could be a congressman someday. He could be Senate president someday. Democrats are not taking this at all for granted. Fryman is turned out to be a pretty good incumbent, and Michelle Drulis, she's been a staffer. She was Joe Egan's chief of staff. She was Tom Malinowski's district director. She gets campaigns. You've got a really young assembly challenger in Ross Traphagen, who was a councilman in Clinton Township, and then you have Grace Zhang from Princeton, who not ever really run for office before, not terribly political, but maybe she had a TV ad that I still to this still think is probably one of the best in the cycle, where she told her story about it, how she left China after Tiananmen Square. She came to the United States. She went to college. She started a small business. She raised a family, and it's a nice story. And I'm watching this ad and I'm thinking, that's a nice story, and that might, it's not bad, as they say sometimes in campaigns, but not enough. And then she delivered this line that, I went and I kept watching it over and over, which is that, she wasn't going to co-parent with communist China. Why is she going to co-parent with Roy Fryman and Michelle Drulis? And it's a powerful line. But then again, this is another situation where this might be a different race. First of all, nobody's getting caught sleeping here. All six of them are working really hard, but Democrats are significantly outspending Republicans, and I think that's a difference. And I think they're watching it. And the Middlesex County organization, is in control of the Democratic Assembly Campaign Committee. Kevin McCabe heavily engaged in this race. Edith Delgado, engaged in it. Scott Snyder by minute by minute. So this is another one I put in this category of. I think it should go Democratic, but if there's there's some upsets, I'm not going to be shocked to the level of Steve Sweeney loses shocked.
I would say for this race, advanced turnout is low too compared to where we were 2 years ago in E-6. 17,000 advanced votes in district now. On E-6 in 2021, we were at 21,000. So advanced turnout is lower, and even lower compared to 2022 when we were at what number was that? 23,000 advanced votes. We're only at 17,000 now. Still E-6, so time can change. But I would think if the Democrats are going to win this, I think it would be because of low turnout, unfortunately, and not high election day turnout. So
the one piece of the puzzle that I'll add to this is just sort of what the district itself is. which kind of requires zooming back to 2011. I promise I'll make this quick, which is this used to be like a sort of core Somerset County district.
Right.
And that meant that it was pretty solidly Republican. And if it remained that, it would be trending left, but it would probably still be controlled by Republicans to this day. But in 2011, the Democrats on the Redistricting Commission, who won that year's like map drawing process, basically had the idea to throw Princeton and South Brunswick into the district. And it's not the craziest choice ever. You know, Montgomery is sort of a suburb of Princeton. There definitely are some connections here, but as you can tell, it looks a little funky. And it very much was purely for the purpose of making this district into something that was winnable for Democrats. And then the story in the 12 years since has just been kind of Democrats slowly building up power. They came close in a couple of early election years. Andrew Zwicker flipped an assembly seat in 2015. Roy Fryman flipped an assembly seat.
By a couple dozen votes, by the way.
What?
By
Sorry.
a couple dozen votes.
By 79 votes, I believe
Yeah.
it was. That was Andrew Zwicker's win. Roy Fryman flipped the seat that had been held by Jack Chitterelli, of all people, in 2017. And then Zwicker flipped the Senate seat in 2021, and Sadaf Jaffer held his assembly seat. So it's been this sort of steady climb for Democrats. And now the test is, and you can tell here, the district is pretty similar after redistricting. It got about a point more Republican, mainly by losing Somerville, which is a big Democratic vote source, and gaining some more competitive territory around Clinton instead. So it's a district that still would have voted for Phil Murphy. And that's a baseline of that really helps out a Democrat. If even Phil Murphy in his sort of rough re-election campaign could win a district, that puts you in a decent spot. But Republicans really do think that this could be the year that after this steady Democratic climb, they can finally start climbing back themselves, and they can knock off Michelle Drulis maybe, or on a really good night, knock off some more. So we'll see. I think the partisan math of the district favors Democrats, the spending favors Democrats, the issues we'll kind of have to see. But yeah, it's clearly a close race. I also think that it would be significantly less surprising for Democrats to win than it would be for Republicans to win.
Mm-hmm. Democrats have found an interesting way, a novel way, I think, of talking about abortion in this district. I believe all three of the candidates' daughters have done commercials for the candidates, introducing the candidates, and talking about abortion rights almost as a family value, which is pretty interesting, pretty novel, and you couldn't get away with it in a state that wasn't so strongly pro-choice as New Jersey. This is a very highly educated district, one of the most highly educated in the country. And we'll have to see how it plays, if it plays any more or less than we've talked about Democrats having success or not having success with the issue. This is a fresh way of talking about it.
Yeah. And this is the district that sent Millicent Fenwick to Trenton. This is bastion of Republicanism, but not always hugely conservative Republicans.
Hillsborough isn't MAGA territory.
Yeah, this was Ray Bateman country. One thing that is getting lost, and this is part of the pitfalls of running for public office at a time when people are polarized behind parties and have less information about voters than ever before. Because more and more what I'm hearing from both sides of the campaigns is that voters are going to walk into the polling place and they're going to, low turnout year. You say these are highly informed voters, but not completely. There's a lot of people that just are those who take their responsibility of voting seriously, but will walk into the polling place having never heard of any of them. So you've got Ross Traphagen, who is running around the 16th district saying, I'm pro-choice. I'm a pro-choice Republican. I'm more Millicent Fenwick and Christy Whitman and Tom Kean Senior Republican. He's campaigning that way. And, just like you've seen in some other districts, Democrats are sort of powering through it, and they're ignoring the fact that Traphagen says he's pro-choice, and they're just labeling him that way. And it's a little easier because Michael Pappas had a strongly pro-life record during his early political career and as a member of Congress. And Democrats are trying to hold him to that record from the 1990s. And I don't, you guys tell me, what you think, but I don't think voters know. Oh, Traphagen, he's not, if they are voters that are voting based upon abortion, but maybe, sort of the old Christie Whitman kind of Republican that's left in this district, the old Millicent Fenwick, Ray Bateman voters, I don't know if they're going to say, well, I don't believe their ads. That Traphagen kid, he's pro-choice too. I'm not going to hold that. I'm going to take that in consideration. I don't think anybody knows it.
Well, I mean, I don't know if in this sort of modern
not have called him
environment,
a kid, by the way. I apologize. That was a mistake on my part, and I apologize to Councilman Traphagen for that.
Councilman Traphagen, who is my age. I mean, the one thing that I'll say is if you're a voter who's motivated by abortion in this current political climate, you're probably a Democratic voter anyways, just in the sense that I think a lot of those voters who in the pre-Roe v. Wade era were more able to convince themselves, well, this is an issue that I find important, but it's not the dominant issue. And clearly we've got some federal protections and yada, yada. I think that the fall of Roe v. Wade has made it harder for a lot of those voters to say, oh, well, but this guy is pro-choice, so I'm not worried about him, because it's all part of the same, like a Republican majority will do things that a Republican majority will do. And I think that even if voters were super well informed about that kind of stuff, you're increasingly seeing polarization on this issue where that might not matter so much. The individual stances might start to matter less and less. Okay. We are getting pretty late into the night, and we are technically only at 16 out of 40, which, to be clear, we're actually way, way, way more than halfway through, because there's really only one hyper-competitive district left.
38, you're right.
Yeah. And so I've got some slides for some others, but I think we can really talk about most of what's to come pretty quickly. So 17, 18, 19 are three Middlesex County-based districts. One of them, 19, is Craig Coughlin's district. 19 is actually mathematically kind of competitive. It's like only a little bit bluer than the 16th, even in terms of presidential and governor's numbers. But no one thinks that Craig Coughlin's going to lose. Republicans are not trying at all. That's a dead race. And 17 is deeply blue. 18 is quite blue. That's all over and done with. District 20, that's Elizabeth and Roselle. No way in hell is that going to be competitive. So I think you can kind of write off 17 to 20. Some interesting stuff happened in the primary. Definitely all over now. Moving on to 21. Which even in 21, not that interesting of a race, but I think that it's worth at least pointing out, because this is a district that just barely voted for Jack Ciattarelli, and they voted for Joe Biden by something like 17 percentage points in 2020. So this is a district that isn't just competitive. It's like a fairly blue district in a lot of races, and yet got a ticket of 3 Republican incumbents. And I think everybody is kind of treating this race this year as, well, they're going to win. Duh. I mean, do you see any signs that is not the right conclusion to take?
No, they're going to win. It's just, first of all, John Bramnick is not your typical Republican, and the voters in this district know it. And he doesn't take his eye off local politics. He's around that district. I don't think there's any surprise. I think the only reason we're going to spend time talking about the 21st district at all is sort of set up 25, that if this will be the year that Bramnick's not on the ticket, it'll be the first time Nancy Munoz has ever run. 25 it would be the first time Nancy Munoz has ever run for office, not with John Bramnick as one of her running mates. Let's see what happens when, tell me who wins the 2024 presidential election, and then we can have a discussion about whether the 21st district is competitive in 25 or not. But this year, I mean, this is strong.
Yeah, Bramnick and his running mates. Ryan, I'll get to you in just a second. Sort of talking about Traphagen and whether he's really broken through into the voters' minds. This trio has very much broken through into the voters' minds. Voters know who John Bramnick is and Nancy Munoz is, and they're getting to know Michelle Matsukuta. She's newer. She was just elected 2 years ago. But this is a trio of incumbents who are not bomb throwers. John Bramnick relishes talking about how much he hates Donald Trump and how he's not your average Republican. He loves that. And so look at this district. Look what the town's in it. That's the kind of thing that makes Westfield voters say, well, I'm a liberal Democrat, but boy, I like John Bramnick, the funniest lawyer in New Jersey. So, I mean, they've got this down to a science. And in a year where there's no real sign that Democrats are breaking through in a big way, there's no reason to think that would suddenly break. In a year where things are breaking Democrats' way, then you start to see the basic breakdown of this district start to haunt Republicans and start to, at a certain point, they can't outrun it forever. But this year, especially given that it got a bit more Republican in redistricting, that's the beginning and end of the story. So what do the votes look like, Ryan?
I would just say, I would say if this district was more of an advanced voting district, it might be more competitive. And I say that because it's one of the few districts where unaffiliated voters make up a humongous chunk of the advanced vote. And I'm reading now, 25% of the advanced votes are from unaffiliated voters right now, and that's more than the statewide average. So, I'm just curious to see what the first set of results are going to look like, since all 4 of these counties released advanced votes first on election night. I'm just curious to see what the march is going to be as the first report. But yeah, if advanced voting was higher in this district, it could be more competitive just because of all the unaffiliated voters voting. But that might not say anything, because just because they're unaffiliated doesn't mean they're completely undecided. So I just found it interesting in terms of how many unaffiliated voters are partaking so far in this district.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And look, the other thing, just very quickly, is there are a group of people who think that John Bramnick is going to run for governor, and there's a group that think he's talked about it, but he's never going to do it. That doesn't make me right, but I think I'm with the first group. I think he's running. I think he's got a story to tell. I think he's got a message that he wants to deliver, and I think he's going to make moves next year to more than just put his toe into the waters. And he's whether there are a lot of Republicans don't like him for what he stands for, but he's a likable guy, and he's going to walk into some of these places, and they're going to say, well, he's a nice guy, he's funny, I don't agree with him, but depending on how big the field is, John Bramnick at this stage of his life, he has been wanting to run for governor, and the one thing I could say about John Bramnick is he is entirely comfortable in his own skin. There is no insecurity there. There is no, what we see so often about, please love me, please, I want to be liked by you. I want everybody to like me. Bramnick at this point, I don't know. It's 10:30 at night, so I can say John Bramnick doesn't give a shit what people think about him. He is true.
All of the children who are watching are
well, it's 10:30. Go to bed, everybody. But I'm sure Ross Traphagen is in bed by now. But
and so will I.
I know.
I'm a little kid, so I'm going to go off.
Yeah, but the point is, Bramnick is secure, and this is something he's always wanted to do. And I don't think he's going to get into this. If he runs for governor, I don't think it's about whether he wins or loses. I think he just wants to be part of the discussion. I think he wants to be part of the debate, and I think he wants to influence the direction of the Republican Party. So, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
And then,
coming to a live stream near you in 2 years.
Yes.
Beer free.
Got a few more less interesting districts after this. 22 is Nick Scutari's district, deep blue. 23 and 24, those are the northwestern hinterlands, deep red. 24 had my favorite primary of primary season. I thought it was super fascinating. It was 3 open races. The Senate seat and both assembly seats were open. The assembly race was super competitive, had really fascinating dynamics, but that's in the past now. Democrats don't even have a full slate there. So those districts are sort of, again, read the voter's guide, find out all about it. And then I think the next district that I've got slides for, at least, is sort of in a similar place to does anyone have any comments on those districts? Yeah. A similar place to the 21st district, but even more so. The 25th district, where this is the district that has been getting bluer at the federal level. This is sort of the core of Morris County. Got Morristown in there. You've got Dover, got Morris Township. And it's got a slate of Republican incumbents who I couldn't find any photos of them all together, and who don't seem to be in a place where they're even remotely scared about losing. I have it on, along with the 21st district and the 39th district, I sort of have it in the corner of my eye as like on the competitive board, just because in a district that regularly votes for Democrats for president at this point, and for those kinds of offices and for Congress, you sort of want to keep an eye out. But once again, you would want to see some kind of sign that Democrats think that this year is their year, where they recruit a really strong slate of local office holders, or where they're pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars in, or where Republicans are starting to seem a little bit scared. And you're not seeing any of that. And you can see in the district lines, they got way shifted this year. This district was completely different. All the Morris County districts got totally shifted. But still voted for Jack Ciattarelli, just not looking like the year for Democrats.
Yeah, Christine Clark is running really a very aggressive race, and really holding Bucco's feet to the fire for the issues he's championed as leader, before he was leader. You're right that it's not showing signs of traction, but I think as the area and as the district continues to change, you can expect that more Democrats are going to want to run harder and are going to want to be more involved, and you'll see more of the Christine Clarks come out and enter races like this.
Yeah, and I think that these districts, this sort of set of suburban districts that are getting bluer at the federal level, are probably always going to be at least minorly on the playing field, as long as they're controlled by Republicans. You're just always going to have to keep a little bit of an eye out. The question is when you sort of start to get the circumstances right, where a Republican is in the White House, or where you've got a not great gubernatorial nominee, or like Democrats are way ahead in the governor's race of that year, whatever it may be, where you're starting to look at, okay, so these are the actual factors that are leading to a real competitive race and not just like a hypothetically competitive one.
I'm going to take the minority position here. This is safe Republican. Bucco's been on the ballot, 4 times in the last 5 years. And I don't know if I have that right. Do I have that right? 4 of the last 5 elections.
19, I mean, he was on the ballot 2019, 2020, 2021, and now it's 2023. So yeah,
and you're talking about a guy who gets and there's a few of them in the state, but not many. This is a guy who is pro-life, pro-gun, gets endorsed by building trades and by the NJEA. He has, I have underestimated Tony Bucco in the past, and it has been to my detriment, because I've said, this district, it's better. I'm not falling for it again. And, I think he's strong, and it's important to point, Barranco is new to this district. He is, I think, the only Hispanic Republican in Trenton. Ora Dunn is very much, the type of Republican that this district has sent for years to the legislature. She's more of a, I don't want to say a moderate, but maybe a little right of center, not to the right. Barranco is a labor guy. He's an electrician, not an electrician union, leader, but a guy that actually, runs wire and, works during the day, at a line kind of a position. I think they're safe. I think, without Bucco on the ticket next time, depending on who's president, we'll look at 21 and 25 and 39 without the senators up a little differently. But I think this is Republican. The important thing to mention about Tony Bucco is he became the minority leader of the Senate this year. He is a candidate for Senate president. If the Republicans win the Senate, I don't think they will, but if they did, he would be the Senate president. He would become the second most powerful guy in New Jersey. He's well liked by Democrats in the state house. He is a guy who will throw bombs at Phil Murphy and Democrats, but when he walks into the Senate, he's respected by people there. I think what you might be looking at, potentially, if Republicans have a good night, I don't know that they will, but if they have a good, and I don't know that they won't, but if they did, and that number sort of bumps up from 16 to 18 or 19, you sort of look at what a perfect storm for Senator Bucco is. it's they hold their seats in South Jersey. He's got more. They've got courtesy. You sort of look at this red wall of courtesy throughout the state, and he's wielding a caucus that is significant. That if those Republicans stay together, Bucco's got a lot of bargaining power in the last 2 years of the Murphy administration.
Yeah, I don't think your view is the minority view, David. I think the days of maybe getting passes is gone, in that we have progressive Democrats that are going to make conservative Republicans answer for those views from here on out. That's all. I don't think anybody's unsafe here. I don't think Republicans are unsafe here at all. Mm-hmm. I just think that you're going to have progressives who are going to jump in and say, "What about your position on guns? Is that the mainstream here? Does that reflect the views of the district?"
Yeah, and they haven't before. I mean, they haven't been able to before. And this is, I'm not as high on Christine Clark. And friends can disagree. I'm not as high on Christine Clark as you are. She's on her way to being a perennial candidate. She ran in 19 for assembly in the 26. She lost. She ran in 2021 for the Senate against Joe Panaccio and lost. This would be her third loss, and there's some hype there, but I'm not sold that she's got the kind of crossover appeal to unaffiliated voters that it would ever take to flip this district. Not this year, not if she runs again in 25. So I'm going way off here, and I apologize, but if Democrats are going to look at winning in 2025, they're probably going to look at some people that have won local elections that can actually bring some votes over and some money.
Since you had that whole the whole spiel about Anthony Bucco, I feel like we should at least give some recognition to John DeMayo's name. He's from the 23rd district, just safely Republican. He's sort of in a similar position where he's got a pretty robust assembly caucus right now. He wants it to grow bigger. The assembly has always been kind of the more raucous of the two chambers, which I feel like is sort of repeated elsewhere. I'm here in Washington, where the House is infinitely more raucous than the Senate. Yeah. And he's got the similar position of Bucco, where he's pretty conservative himself, but he's generally well respected by Democrats. But he also has the challenge.
By the way, maybe because he used to be one.
He did used to be a Democrat, although, I don't know how much Jeff Van Drew is respected by a lot of Democratic House members in Washington. So I don't know if party switchers are not necessarily beloved. I don't know if Don Adiego is the most popular among Burlington Republicans. But yeah, DeMayo gets along well with Democrats, but has this caucus that is just it's growing increasingly intent on gumming up the works on the floor and pushing for their own bills. And if you see him win another, 4 seats and get to like 38 out of 80, hypothetically, then that's a serious caucus on his hands. Yeah. And that's something that it doesn't have quite the same power as in the Senate because there's not courtesy, but you're definitely, both Bucco and DeMayo on a good night for Republicans could stand to become significant power players in Trenton than they already are.
I agree. And by the way, DeMayo has sort of, he and the map have rejuvenated the Assembly Republican staff. They have been on fire lately, and
post a lot of memes
since the last.
They're the memeiest of the caucuses.
Yeah, but they're doing a lot. They're doing a lot of. They've had some effect on the floor too. They've been effective in terms of talking about issues that DeMayo wanted to talk about. And, they at least deserve, a little bit of a shout out.
Yeah. So after 25, we've got a lot of districts in a row that I don't think we're going to have much to say. The other Morris County district is 26, pretty safely red. If the 25th isn't going to flip, then the 26th definitely isn't going to flip. 27 is a fascinating district that I encourage you to read all of our old stories about, because it just went through crazy iterations this year of it was going to be one ticket at the beginning of the year, and now the ticket that we've got is 100% different from what that ticket was going to be. Got 2 new assembly people, Rosie Bagoli and Alex Uncayazos-Gill. It's just a wild set of stories that I don't think that this is the right place necessarily to talk about.
Yeah. But by the way, it is very quickly, we've got to point out that Dick Cody is retiring.
Yes.
And the longest serving legislator in the history of the state. I was in the 7th grade when he first ran for office. You know, he was in West Orange. I was in Livingston. It wasn't my district, but I remember all these signs and learning his name. And I met him for the first time when I was a 12-year-old legislative aide. He is just he is an institution, and whether you like him or you don't like him, 50 years in the legislature deserves, a little bit of a tribute. And by the way, and I think I could say this and still remain objective, in an era where we watched a decline of Dianne Feinstein in the U.S. Senate, kudos to Cody for walking away when he's at the top of his game, walking away when he, before anybody's, feeding him tapioca pudding through an intravenous tube. He is, you got to know in this business when it's time to go. And when, you've had an illustrious career that ought to be defined by your accomplishments and not by, not by somebody who people just feel he's been there too long and too old. He is a tough competitor. You never ever count him out. If you told me that Cody says in 2 years, I miss it, I'm going to run for, Roseland Council or something, I wouldn't be shocked. But the guy is a fixture in New Jersey politics, and he deserves the respect as a former governor and Senate president and 50-year legislator to be, recognized, at least in this conversation, as being somebody who I think is going to be talked about 50 years from now.
And since you mentioned retirements, we should also say that before we even get to election day, we've got a turnover in the legislature of 30 people who are leaving their seats.
Yeah.
So at least that many people know when it's time to go, and maybe more.
Well, some of those are assembly members running for the Senate. So
that's why I said leaving their seats. Yeah. But that's going to be the biggest turnover change we've had in the legislature, at least since 2000, probably even more than 2007 at this point.
Yeah, it's huge turnover. There's certain counties in particular, Essex and Hudson and Ocean, where things are really, Essex and Hudson is just like an entirely new legislature. We didn't really mention Steve Oraho, the retiring former Senate minority leader. Bucco has now taken his place, so he's not technically minority leader anymore, but he had a 1.5-year stint as minority leader, hugely respected. He unexpectedly decided that this year was his last. But he's another. So you've got some really powerful figures stepping down. You've got Sandra Cunningham in Hudson County, who has unfortunately had some prolonged health issues that have kept her from the Senate. This is her last year there. You're definitely Nick Sacco in Hudson. I realize I'm getting ahead of myself, but Nick Sacco got redistricted into the same district. Nia Gill got redistricted in the same district. Woth of them got kind of screwed by redistricting. They're on their way out. So you got like hundreds of years of legislative experience. I wonder if that would actually be a good thing to add up. How much legislative experience. You got a couple of freshmen retiring. You've got some people who've been there for 30 to 40 to 50 years, but lots of experience is heading out and lots of new people are coming in. And I'll quickly sort of cobble together all of Essex to say, so 27, 28, 29, and 34, and sort of 40, which is a Republican held district, but mainly those 4 other districts are these deep blue Democratic districts. None are remotely in question on Tuesday. They're all going to vote for Democrats by 50 points or whatever. But you've got this majorly reshaped delegation. There's all kinds of retirements for different reasons. And it is unquestionably the most diverse legislative delegation in New Jersey history. It's of the 12 legislators from those 4 districts, I think it is 9 women, 10. I think it's 10 women out of 12. I
think 4 of the 5 senators that will represent Essex next year, including Kristen Corrado, who has a larger piece than she's had before. 4 out of the 5 senators are going to be women.
Yeah.
A majority, the delegation itself, a majority women, a majority non-white.
And you've got 2 districts, the 28th and the 29th, that are both all women. The 29th was already that way. The 28th is newly that way. Mm-hmm. And you've also got one quick other note is Leroy Jones, the Essex Democratic County Chair, 2 years ago did not have any close allies in the Senate. It wasn't necessarily enemies in the Senate, but it wasn't people who are true sort of Leroy Jones acolytes. And now you're gonna have 3 different state senators, all of them new. One of them already in there, Renee Burgess, and then 2 soon to come, Brittany Timberlake and John McKeon, who are all Leroy Jones people. And so that's not something you're going to find reflected on, say, a Wikipedia page, but that's a huge footprint increasing thanks to this year. Talking about Hudson County quickly, lots of turnover there too. I mean, Hudson turnover is never all that shocking because the mayors there get sick of their assembly members all the time and kick them out after like 2 or 4 years just because they feel like it. So we're kind of seeing that again this year. You've got Brian Stack redistricting to another district. You've got Raj Mukherjee taking his spot. So that's a new senator. You've got Angela McKnight taking Sandra Cunningham's spot. So you've got a pretty new Senate delegation. And that's big news. Lots of new assembly candidates. 5 of the 6 members of the assembly from the county are going to be new, and the 6th has only been there for 2 years. So you're going to see this whole new set of assembly members. The real question, I think, in terms of looking at these new assembly members is whether any of them are going to be like a Mukherjee, who sort of rises above the typical assembly member from Hudson County who is a little bit beholden to their mayor and struggles to break out into their own political niche and make their own what's the word I'm looking for? Make their own political luck, basically. Whether any of them are able to do that, or whether it's going to continue to be this musical chairs. So again, not a question for the general election, but just worth pointing out. I don't know. Anyone have any Hudson thoughts?
No, I got a text from somebody who I respect a lot saying, "Shut up, let Joey move through the map," and it's going on. So I won't say anything about Hudson other than Brian P. Stagg taking elections seriously. So
I live in LD 32, and there's no sign, surprisingly, probably because Raj is going to win the Senate seat. But my old roommate used to work for him and said he's a great guy. So I look forward to him being my senator.
We're all pro Raj here.
Yeah.
35, core of Patterson, not interesting this year. And then 36. I'm putting this in here. This is not, I don't think people really view this as a competitive district, but I'm putting this in here because it's fun to talk about, because the Republican ticket is such a mess. And David, since you broke the story about how much of a mess this is, would you like to talk about it?
It's late. It's 10:45. So, I'll
But it's scatological.
Yeah. It was, they did a shitty job vetting, with one of their assembly candidates, and that's it. I mean, this is, this is just not a, this is just not a guy who should have made his way on a serious ticket. And
Micah, it's Joseph Viso we're talking about.
Joseph Viso, and when I, the reason I say it is because he, he's the only, there's what, 120 legislative seats, so 200 and I don't know how many are unopposed.
230 or so two-party candidates.
I think he's the only candidate of either party who has stood before a judge and pled guilty to smearing feces on the door of a God, I can't even, it's easier to write this than to say it, because it's just
a preschool, right?
A preschool. And
because he was mad.
Yeah. And I'm talking to the guy on the phone and I'm saying, and he says, but you got to understand, he said, Obama just got elected president.
Oh yeah.
And I was angry and I couldn't believe that. I mean, I just, and this was the second story after the one about, his convictions, his serious things, drug possession and intent to distribute and serious financial issues. And by the way, all of that, everybody was sort of, all right, we're not gonna play there anyway, but whatever. But the, it was the feces story that really, it really stuck there. I'm sorry. It's late, and it's just ridiculous that serious people, can't vet a candidate appropriately enough to say, no, this guy's going to work out. And, the best line, by the way, was on, Twitter. It was, and because he said it publicly, I can say it, which was Seth Hahn, the executive director of the Assembly Democrats. He said, boy, when I was angry about the outcome of a presidential election, all I did was attend a candlelight vigil. This is not what, this is just a different kind of candidate. And I don't understand how the party, not only did they not, with the exception of Bill Spadea, who said, this is unacceptable. Bob Hugin put $10,000 of his own money into this race, and they were, that funded a, pretty aggressive campaign commercial that the Globe put up this morning. This is just, this is part of why Republicans had a map that gave them a pathway in a perfect world to to majority, something that they have complained that they have never had before, or not had for 20 years. You heard Jack Ciattarelli say, give me a competitive map and I'll get you a Republican legislature. This district is simply, to me, indicative of the fact that Republicans, couldn't, had a lot of recruitment failures up and down the state, and people who they don't bring a base with them. They don't bring votes that Republicans aren't going to get on their own, and they don't have any money, and they're running against some well-funded candidates, Paul Sarlo, Gary Scher, and Clinton Calabrese, who are they're taking this seriously. They don't want to get caught, they don't want to get caught asleep. And they, God, can you imagine what it would be like for poor Clinton Calabrese if he loses to this guy? This is not a guy who's supposed to be in the legislature, and Republicans should have caught this early.
And everyone has demons in their past, and I fully support.
We sure do, Joe.
Their past issues. Yeah. I would just recommend to those people who have past issues like this that you do not willingly and repeatedly run for public office. Mm-hmm. That's just my free advice to you: is if you don't want this kind of stuff to sort of be out in the world, don't run for state assembly. Come on. I put the map back on before. You can tell this district is not that democratic. It's not overwhelmingly democratic. It's about as democratic as some of the other districts that are very competitive this year, like the 16th and like the 38th, which we'll get to in a second. But when you have Democratic incumbents who are running strong and Republicans who might even lose votes if they tried to campaign more, because then people would learn more about them, then that's just not really a tenable situation for a Republican victory. And also, this, by the way, is the exact same. This is a perfect rematch of 2021. All 6 of these people were on the ballot in 2021, and Democrats won easily. Even though Democrats were having a pretty bad year elsewhere, this was not a district where they sweated at all. So I think that's kind of over and done with.
And you've got Chris Oriema, who is these are conservative candidates. These are culturally conservative candidates. But Chris Oriema is a veteran. He was a fireman. This is it's the kind of guy that maybe there should have been some guidance and brought up through the ranks and run for a local office and maybe would have been better. But this guy in the middle. I'm sorry, I can't. Yes. And look, I am a perfect example of somebody who understands that not everybody lives a perfect life, and I get it. But I think what you're seeing here there are things people just won't accept, and smearing feces on the door of a nursery school is, we don't know where the line is in this business all the time, but we can see the line there. That was just, that's just crazy. But even without that story, even without all that, I don't know that this district, is in peril for Democrats.
Yeah. For the record, Micah, Ryan, and I have all led perfect lives. So just so you know, you're sort of the odd one out here.
Yeah, guys, just remember that I knew Micah when he was in high school, and I'm not going to pull out my Oppo book, but let's just consider this a 2-2 tie, and we'll move on.
Okay, great. So we're now thoroughly in Bergen County. We're at the end of the rope here. We're only got a couple districts left. 37 is like the deep blue parts of Bergen County. Nothing really interesting happened there this year. So the last district that's really in the playing field this year is the 38th district. And I honestly don't have a ton to say about this district. I mean, I feel like it is sort of the most generic is not quite the right word, but it's most straightforward of any of the races in the state. It's kind of like the most indicative of how the political environment has generally gone this year. This is a modestly blue district. Phil Murphy won it by 5 points in 2021. So not terrible, not amazing, not safe necessarily, but also you got a little bit of a cushion there. You've got 3 Democratic incumbents running, Joe Lagana, the senator, and then Lisa Swain and Chris Tully, all pretty strong incumbents. Swain and Tully each chair a committee, Lagana, decently prominent figure in the Senate. And you've got Republicans who really thought that they were really wanted to run like the campaign of the century this year. And they think that a lot about the 38th district. This is definitely a district where Republicans have had these visions of breaking through for a while and have not succeeded in a couple of decades. And like a couple of other districts around the state, they struggled to really put together the ticket that they were looking for. They put out a lot of feelers to local office holders. As you can tell, this district has a lot of towns, and there's a variety of Republicans who are elected to many of these towns. There's a Paramus councilman that they tried to get. There were different local office holders from the other towns that they wanted to run for the assembly, and it just didn't really work out. So you end up with this ticket of Micheline Attier, who was a school board member many decades ago, but that's not really her main calling card here. She's a local businesswoman. Gail Horton, who has run for the district before, and then Barry Wilkes, who is another local businessman who is relatively prominent within the Glen Rock Republican Party. His daughter, Alex Wilkes, is also a key part of the state Republican Party infrastructure. So he's got those connections. He's probably the strongest member of that ticket. If you were to see if you were just to see one Republican win this year, it'd probably come from him. But yeah, and so that kind of sets up a situation that is not that dissimilar.
Joey, let me interrupt for 1 second, because I agree with everything, and Barry Wilkes is not just because he's Alex's father-in-law, but he is
father-in-law. Sorry,
yeah, but he's a businessman, and he ran in a Democratic town locally, did really well, and from every they gather just likable and really really good, vibrant campaigner. The question is, if what you said, if they pick off one seat, whose is it?
Most likely, I think Chris Tully. I think if you look at past election results, he tends to run a little bit behind Swain. She has a more prominent position in the legislature as the Assembly Appropriations Chair. I don't know how much that matters to individual voters these days. I don't know how much they know about that, but she has a more direct ability to specifically deliver wins for the district. But I mean, we're probably playing a game of inches here. All these candidates are probably going to be, and this is true of most districts across the state, with a couple of specific exceptions, you're probably going to see very correlated results across the 3 running mates. 30th district with Lakewood, that's an exception. The 8th district where the Senate candidate has been kind of abandoned, that's an exception. But in most cases, I would be surprised if you saw candidates diverging more than, 1,000 votes or whatever it may be from their running mates. But yeah, and so I kind of lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, I mean, and the issues are here what they are in other places. Republicans seem to sort of have the edge on focusing on some of these sort of parental rights things and property tax things. Democrats, like elsewhere, have the edge on spending. They're pumping millions of dollars in, which Republicans just cannot match. So yeah, I mean, that kind of sets up a little bit of, it's a lean Democratic race in my opinion, but it's clear that both parties are really interested in it. That's sort of where it's at.
Yeah, I think Lagana is going to spend about $2 million. He is up on broadcast TV right now, which you haven't seen in a very long time, and
especially in
one of these Bergen County races. Yeah, especially. I mean, that is it's the most expensive media market, in the country, and and he's reaching just 240,000 people in Bergen County.
Yeah, I love the idea of like voters in like White Plains and Long Island and Fairfield County, Connecticut, being like, oh, Joe Lagana, wonder who he is.
But Lagana, but the key there, if you put that map back up, Paramus, for almost the entirety of my following New Jersey politics, Paramus has been a swing town. And it's not a huge city, but it's not tiny either. And it could go either way. Paramus has become much more conservative and much redder. And that's Lagana's hometown. And I don't know that he can depend upon a win out of Paramus. He's got to look at Fair Lawn and Lodi and some of the margins in some of the southern towns, and it's Bergenfield. He's got to. This is not easy, and one of the things that I hear with increased frequency just over the last few weeks from both parties is 38 could be a surprise, and Lagana has been working it. He's been working it for 2 years, but this, what we'll see on election day. And I want to hear Ryan's, report on the advanced voting. Certainly, E-6, but it's going to be a question of whether the 38th is shifting, and whether this is just becoming a more Republican area than Democrats even thought it was when they drew this map.
Yeah, so I would say for advanced voting, depending on the year you look at, I would say for this district, in 2021 on E-6 this time out, Democrats and overall turnout for advance are at 101%, so slightly over 2021 where we were back then. For 2022 though, we're only at 92% overall advanced turnout and 88% specifically for the Democrats. So I'm not sure what to make of that for two things. One, advanced voting is very low in this district. In 2021, it was 19% advance, and then 2022 is 21% advance. So it's a highly electionary voting district. Whether maybe it's a trend that it'll go up more from 2022, from 21% to higher. That could be a possibility, especially if there's lower turnout on election day. But I think I would think this is still a close race, just because it's a very low advanced voting district. And we're roughly at the same spot where we were in 2021, 6 days out. So
I mean, my prior is that my modal outcome for what I think this race will end up looking like is sort of a repeat of 2021, where you kind of end up, the 2021 race was certainly closer than I think Democrats really expected. Lagana won by 6 points, I think, and the Assembly candidates won by a little bit less. I kind of think that that's the most likely outcome again this year. But being the most likely outcome does not mean that that's going to happen, and you could sort of see swings in either direction. I think Republicans do have a genuine shot here. Yeah. So I've got one more district. Well, there's two more districts total. I got one more in terms of actual slides, but I think we can kind of talk about the 39th and the 40th a little bit together. The 39th is another one like the 25th and the 21st, where it's a blue trending district. It voted for Joe Biden by a decent margin. It was actually made more Democratic in redistricting. But no, once again, I think I've said these exact words before here, but there's no reason to believe that this year of all years would be the year when Democrats break through. That's not the way that things are trending right now. You've got two Republican incumbents in Holly Chapezi and Bob Oth, and then one new candidate in John Azariti. They're pretty strong. The Democratic ticket against them, not the worst. They've got two former office holders in Jody Murphy and Damon Engles. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but they're not really spending any money. And once again, I've got this on the sort of competitive board purely as we should always keep an eye on it. But there's not too much else there. And then I don't have a graphic for the 40th district, but we've got to end where it properly ends in the 40th. It was actually turned into a district that Joe Biden won in 2020 in redistricting. It wasn't before. So the deal map actually overall increased the number of districts that Biden won. But that's ultimately not the important number in terms of legislative elections. The important number is state level results. And Jack Chiarelli won it by like 12 points. You've got one new assemblyman this year, likely assemblyman in Al Barlas, Essex GOP chair. So Leroy Jones, when he helped redraw the map, because Jones and Barlas were the two co-chairs of the map drawing commission, Leroy Jones got himself a significantly increased footprint in the Senate. Al Barlas just got himself a straight up assembly seat. So he'll be headed there. That'll probably happen. Democrats are
co-parenting works, doesn't it? So
say it again.
Co-parenting works.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got to tell you, this just happened last week. This will be one that I'm going to be talking about for years. I apologize to everybody who's going to have to hear me talk about it for years, but I called Jennifer Ehrentraut, the Democratic candidate for state senate, a Hawthorne school board member, and it was, it was about a fairly mundane issue regarding her not resigning getting a job at the county level and then not keeping it very long. And boy, you want to talk about what not to do. Not just with me, but anybody else. But if I call somebody on their cell phone and they answer the phone, they ought not pretend to be somebody else to avoid the conversation, because I've watched some of the things online, and that was her. She answered the phone. I told her that I was calling for the New Jersey Globe, and rather than say, I can't talk to you now, or I don't want to talk to you, or whatever, she pretended to be somebody else answering her cell phone. And that's just a kind of ridiculous, cartoonish, clownish kind of behavior that makes me just dismiss somebody's credibility. I mean, it was just, it didn't need to happen that way. And she's not going to win anyway, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for anybody to ever get me to take her seriously in the future. I just, I can't get over that, in this day and age, people think they can get away with it. And, I don't know, maybe it's regular that Democratic candidates for the Senate in District 40 have have body people that, walk around holding their cell phone. I don't think Jennifer Ehrentraut is one of them. So, it was just a thing about credibility. And, and I'll leave you with this on the 40th. When I look at the map since 1973, when New Jersey went to a 40 legislative district map, there's a lot of Democrats. There's a lot of districts that Republicans have never won. But this district, the 40th, which is not entirely dissimilar to where it was 50 years ago, it's the only one in the state that Democrats have not won at all. And it's a part of the country that, part of the state, I'll get it right, it's late, but part of the state where it's not as Republican as it used to be, but this has been a bastion of Republicanism, and Corrado and DePhillips and Barlas, I think they're in pretty good shape.
Okay.
Do you want to ask me what I really think of Jennifer Ehrentraut, or
No, I think we can move on from Jennifer Ehrentraut. I think that we have thoroughly covered that ground.
Please, Mike. By the way, the message here, the plea at 11 o'clock at night, 3 hours and 7 minutes into this live stream, is in the future county chairs of both parties. Vet your candidates, run serious people. Don't run a guy who smears feces on a nursery school door, and don't run a woman who pretends that she's not herself when she answers her phone.
Okay, those are your concluding remarks.
Those are my takeaways.
You'll
Yeah,
He's not asking too much.
no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Part of me wants to make some grand wrap up for this whole thing, but also part of me says it's 11:08.
Yeah.
And you know what you should do if you want a big wrap up of this whole thing? You should go to the NewJerseyGlobe.com and find our 2023 voters guide and read the entire thing. You will find so much more. If you wanted a print version of a 3-hour exhausting live stream, then check out this exhausting voters guide. Great. All right, Micah, Ryan, have anything to add to this slightly delirious ending?
Ditto.
Yeah, go vote. Yeah.
Go vote. Yes, that is actually a really good ending.
Yeah.
Vote early or vote on election day, or if you have a mail-in ballot, you should probably just go to the go and turn it in person. What's the proper
Joey, you're like teeing this up again. You know, you want to get off this live stream and you're just teeing it up. It is E-6.
Yeah.
I'm learning this. E-6. If you want to vote, don't go.
It's actually pretty close to E-5.
It's almost. Yeah.
Is as E-6.
Yeah. But you know, if you're going to vote and you're going to fill, you're going to vote by mail, don't go anywhere near a U.S. post office.
No.
Not this late, or your chances of that ballot being counted, are diminished. So go on the Division of Elections website and look for where your drop boxes are. There are a lot of them, and don't use the post office.
Yes.
Okay. That'll teach you, Joey,
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say hand it in person instead of going through the mail. That is what I was saying.
They emphasize that too. If you look at the Secretary of State's website or county websites, they emphasize drop boxes first over mailing it in. So do that.
And with that, I will call it the end of the stream. Thank you to anybody who is insane enough to watch the entire thing. If you've watched this in pieces over the course of your day tomorrow /today/whatever, then that's great too. We're just glad that you joined us. And thank you to Micah and David and Ryan for being here. And go vote.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody follow Ryan Dubicki on Twitter, because his numbers and what he's doing to follow this election are amazing. So Ryan, give everybody your Twitter handles so they can go follow you now.
Yes, Dubicki Ryan. It's reverse.
Good.
So, easy to remember.
And I'm gonna just use my prerogative as the editor to close this by saying I mean Joey Fox's voter guide is extraordinary, and I hope I'm gonna embarrass you here, but I remember getting your resume. It was close to this hour. It was 11
Saturday night
on a Saturday night. And I look at this resume and I was like, holy crap, this is just great. And if you really want to work for the New Jersey Globe, put as one of your hobbies. I write Wikipedia biographies of New York City council members. I spoke to Joey. I looked at everything he wrote. I thought to myself, I think I got the next Steve Kordacki on my hands, and this is now your third cycle with the New Jersey Globe. This is the second voter guide you have done entirely on your own, and this third. Well, no, I
did the primary one in 2022.
Primary, that's right. And then yes, absolutely. I mean, it is just extraordinary work, and it showcases your talent, and people beyond us and the Fox family ought to read every word of it, because it is a treasure. So Joey, thank you for everything you did there. And to the face you don't see on the screen, Kevin Sanders, who makes everything at the New Jersey Globe operate on time,
including the voters guide. He was super instrumental.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, if Sanders wasn't calling me 20 times a day, kicking my ass, saying, if you don't finish it today, we're not going to be able to get it out. Kevin Sanders is the glue that holds this company together. And I'm going to, you know what? It's a slate. I'm going to add him here. So
you're in trouble now.
Take away. He's dressed. He's presentable. He doesn't have a knit hat on tonight. He is the guy behind the scenes that makes this whole place work. So thank you, Joey. Thank you, Kevin. Micah, as always, great analysis. Ryan, I'm happy that you were part of this tonight too. Thanks everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And with that, I'll be quiet. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.